All of a sudden, the 72 sword spirit children flew back through the air to surround Jin Tong and Yi Jiao's trio at Han Li's behest. Immediately thereafter, a giant lightning formation took shape, and the four of them vanished amid a flash of lightning. Having teleported them to safety, Han Li sat down in midair with his legs crossed, then began channeling his great 5 elemental illusion mantra with all his might. The golden moon above his head was giving off dazzling radiance, while the stars formed by his time-severing torch were also eager not to be outshone. The river of time formed by the clear time vial began to swirl around him, and the mountain range of illusory dawn sand expanded rapidly, while the lush forest formed by the eastern vicissitudes divine tree grew in a frenzy. The flow of time within Han Li's spirit domain was instantly accelerated by 100-fold, and as a result, the rate at which Earth law powers were surging into Xuan Yuan Jai's body from the surrounding space also sped up drastically. Bursts of dull rumbling began to ring out incessantly from down below, and Han Li looked down to discover that a continent from some immortal region had risen up into the air, passing through the ether sphere, the astral sphere, and the extra-heaven sphere as it ascended toward Xuan Yuan Jai. As the continent passed through the ether sphere, countless streaks of light could be seen fleeing from it, but by the time it entered the astral sphere, those streaks of light had become far sparser and fewer in number. By the time it entered the extra-heaven sphere, the entire continent began to disintegrate just like the floating continent from earlier, leaving behind only a vast body of Earth law powers that converged toward Xuan Yuan Jai. As more and more Earth law powers gathered around him, his aura became purer and purer, and he strayed further and further away from humanity and closer to the heavenly Tao. He began to instinctively resist this influx of power, but his affinity with Earth law powers had become so great that it continued to surge into his body irrespective of his wishes. "Here, have some more," Han Li roared as he injected his time law powers into his spirit domain with no reservation. One time law thread after another vanished into thin air, disintegrating into pure time law powers that fused into the surrounding space. The flow of time was accelerated drastically once again, and in the blink of an eye, all of the Earth law powers that had entered Han Li's spirit domain were devoured by Xuan Yuan Jai. Even the countless asteroids within the extra-heaven sphere had begun to disintegrate, further contributing to the influx of Earth law powers surging into Xuan Yuan Jai's body. Finally, the moment that Han Li had been waiting for arrived. An all-encompassing vortex with its boundaries completely out of sight appeared behind Xuan Yuan Jai. It represented the most essential power of the earth under the heavens, and it flowed out like a hot spring to envelop Xuan Yuan Jai. A hint of clarity finally returned to Xuan Yuan Jai's hollow eyes, but it was already too late, and the heavenly Tao had already begun claiming him. "Stop!" he yelled in a desperate voice as he tried to struggle free from the gargantuan vortex, but to no avail. Meanwhile, Han Li was also suffering immensely. He was burning through his time law powers at an alarming rate, and he was already beginning to feel symptoms of severe overexertion. However, his resolve didn't waver in the slightest. He knew that this still wasn't enough for Xuan Yuan Jai to be assimilated by the heavenly Tao. Only by continuing to accelerate the flow of time and exhausting every last ounce of his time law powers was there a sliver of a chance that he could support the heavenly Tao assimilation process to completion. "Han Li, your great Tao conflicts with that of the time Tao ancestor, so a showdown between the two of you is inevitable. If you stop now, I can help you," Xuan Yuan Jai desperately implored as a sense of despair began to set in. "You think I'd believe you?" Han Li scoffed in an emotionless manner. "No, I can swear an unbreakable vow," Xuan Yuan Jai yelled as the desperation in his voice crescendoed to a peak. Han Li's resolve wavered for a split second upon hearing this. If he could have one of the essential 5 elemental Tao ancestors on his side, then he would be much better equipped to oppose the heavenly court. However, he quickly abandoned this thought as he had no confidence that a vow would be enough to control Tao ancestor. Thus, he continued to burn through his own time, law powers, in order to accelerate Xuanyuanjai's demise. Once it became clear to Xuanyuanjai that Han Li wasn't going to be convinced, his desperate pleas turned to vicious curses, and his despair turned to vindictive joy once he realized that Han Li didn't possess sufficient time, law powers to drive him to his doom. You can't keep this up for long, Han Li. I'll remain alive as long as I'm not completely assimilated by the heavenly Tao, and once you've exhausted all of your power, I'll grind your body down bit by bit in the most torturous fashion possible, then use your nascent soul to ignite a soul lamp. His deranged voice was echoing throughout the entire extra heaven sphere, but Han Li wasn't even able to make out what he was saying anymore. He had overexerted himself to such an extent that his vision had turned into a complete blur, and his 5 elemental illusory world was also on the verge of collapse. Right at this moment, a voice suddenly rang out within Han Li's consciousness. "Should I lend you some power?" "Senior vile spirit, no, who are you?" Han Li asked in an alarmed manner. "I am you and you are me," the voice replied. "You're my self-corp soul," Han Li exclaimed in realization. Ever since he had reached the pinnacle of the great encompassment stage, he had been searching extensively for his self-corp soul, and with his body pushed to the extreme, it had finally been awakened. "Are you going to try and claim my body now? Given the current circumstances, even if you manage to take over, you and I will die here anyway," Han Li sighed. "I have no such intentions. As your self-corp soul, I am more similar to you than any other entity in this world, and your thoughts and intentions mirror my own," the self-corp soul replied. In the next instant, Han Li felt his completely depleted law power reserves beginning to regenerate, and the self-corp soul really was lending him its power. In the blink of an eye, Han Li had recovered close to half of his time law powers, but by then, Xuanyuanjai had already been given a window of respite, during which he was able to forcibly sever his connection with the heavenly Tao. At this point, half of his body had already vanished, while the remaining half was beginning to display signs of petrification, leaving him in a state that was only slightly better than that of the clairvoyant's Tao ancestor, Chen Tuan. "Han Li," Xuanyuanjai roared with intense fury and resentment brewing in his voice. However, before he had a chance to do anything, a streak of golden light suddenly appeared behind him without any warning. Within the streak of golden light was Jin Tong's enormous gold-devouring beetle form, and she opened her mouth to reveal a huge, golden vortex, emanating from within which were bursts of extremely formidable law power fluctuations. Xuanyuanjai immediately attempted to flee in an alarmed manner, but Han Li beat him to the punch, flying over to his side in a flash before slamming a palm down onto the top of his head. Rays of golden light that were imbued with time law powers surged out of the palm of his hand, instantly stopping Xuanyuanjai cold in his tracks. The palm strike itself posed no threat to Xuanyuanjai, but this split second of immobilization made it impossible for him to escape from Jin Tong, and he was devoured whole in a flash. "No!" A thunderous, indignant cry rang out, only to be abruptly cut off as Jin Tong closed her mouth. A burst of thunderous rumbling then rang out from within her belly, and it seemed as if Xuanyuanjai were desperately attempting to force his way out, but she remained unfazed as she quickly reverted back to her human form. She had undergone another drastic transformation since Han Li last saw her, and both her body and aura had become far more mature than before. There was a calm and composed look on her face, and it was as if there were a pair of swirling vortexes in her eyes, giving off a transcendent aura. "Your aura," Han Li began in a concerned manner. It's still yet to be consolidated, but it'll stabilize over time, Jin Tong reassured. I thought that your ascension to become a Tao ancestor would be accompanied by some spectacular phenomena, but it's surprisingly peaceful, Han Li remarked. Right now, I should be devouring this part of the extra heaven sphere, but I've just devoured Xunyuan Jai instead, and it's going to take me quite some time to digest his power, Jin Tong explained. After a brief silence, she continued, You saved me again. Han Li's brows furrowed slightly upon hearing this, and he reprimanded, Why didn't you tell me that you were preparing for a breakthrough? How could you be so reckless? Yi Jiao's trio had just arrived on the scene, and they were all stunned to hear this. Never had they heard anyone dare to speak to their insect ancestor in such a reprimanding tone. However, it was clear that the two of them shared quite a close bond, so Yi Jiao's trio decided not to interrupt their reunion, instead sitting down in midair with their legs crossed to rest and recuperate. Jin Tong's brows furrowed slightly as she opened her mouth to say something, but remained silent in the end. Right at this moment, her expression suddenly changed slightly as she pressed a hand over her own abdomen. What's wrong? Han Li hurriedly asked. Xunyuan Jai is fighting the devouring law powers in my body, Jin Tong replied. Do you need my help? Han Li asked. If he were still outside, then perhaps I would struggle a little to deal with him, but now that he's already in my stomach, his demise is only a matter of time. It's just that his essential earth law powers will be a little difficult to deal with, Jin Tong relied. Han Li took a glance at their surroundings, then said, Our battle against Xuanyuan Jai has to have already attracted a great deal of attention, so we can't stay here for much longer. Suppress him for now, and I'll take you somewhere else for your seclusion. Jin Tong hesitated momentarily upon hearing this, then nodded in response. Han Li flew over to Yi Jiao's trio as he said, You three can leave as well. I'm going to take Jin Tong somewhere safe to cultivate in seclusion. Yi Jiao's trio turned to Jin Tong in an inquisitive manner, and only after receiving confirmation that they were to leave did they reluctantly do so. After that, Han Li recovered his azure bamboo cloudswarm swords, then sat down with his legs crossed before taking several pills to aid in his recovery. Inside a floating, golden palace somewhere in the heavenly court. There were countless bursts of energy swirling around the palace, pulverizing everything in the surrounding area to give the entire space a rather ethereal appearance. The golden palace was very vibrant in color, but it possessed no aura of opulence. Instead, it resembled an antiquated Taoist temple. The palace gates were tightly shut, and dull thumps were ringing out within it incessantly, while the entire palace occasionally trembled, further exacerbating the unrest in the nearby space. Right at this moment, the commotion in the golden palace abruptly subsided, and its gates swung open as none other than Gu Huijin flew out from within. Beyond the gates was a vast, golden space with no end in sight, and there also seemed to have been no ground, as if this were someplace in the heavens. Hovering within the golden space were numerous orbs the size of houses, and they were flashing with lights of different colors, as if they were stars in the sky. The gates quickly swung shut, following which Gu Huijin swept a sleeve through the air to summon a yellow scroll, on each end of which was engraved an ornate, golden dragon. The pair of miniature dragons sprang to life at his behest, biting onto the two ends of the scroll before unfurling it to reveal a list of names that were giving off lights of different colors and degrees of brightness. Near the top of the list was a name that had turned completely gray, and it belonged to none other than Xuanyuan Jai. Someone has managed to slay Xuanyuan Jai, Gu Huijin remarked to himself as two beams of golden light shot out of his eyes toward Xuanyuan Jai's name on the scroll. Countless bursts of yellow light instantly descended from the scroll, while Xiunyuanjai's name swelled to countless times its original size to form a spatial passageway. In the blink of an eye, a vast area was presented to Gu Huajin, and it was the precise area of the extra heaven sphere that Han Li and Jin Tong were situated in. Oh, it seems like the insect ancestor has already returned, and there's someone else of interest with her as well, Gu Huajin remarked as his gaze fell upon Jin Tong and Han Li. All of a sudden, Han Li's eyes sprang open as he scoured his gaze over his surroundings, following which he swept both sleeves through the air like lightning. 10 golden sword projections instantly shot out of his left sleeve at an indescribable speed, looking as if they were capable of transcending time and space as they vanished into thin air. Meanwhile, a burst of golden light erupted out of his right sleeve to sweep up the nearby Jin Tong. Right at this moment, the flow of time in the nearby space was cast into a state of complete disarray as a giant golden palm that was dozens of kilometers in size appeared before swooping down upon Han Li and Jin Tong. A burst of time law powers erupted out of the golden palm, and everything beneath it instantly fell completely still. Thankfully, Han Li's lightning teleportation allowed him and Jin Tong to flee before the time law powers from the giant palm had a chance to act upon them, and the two of them vanished amid a flash of golden lightning. The giant golden palm came crashing down with unmatched power, completely destroying all of the space, time, and matter down below. Enormous waves of golden light swept through the air in all directions, pulverizing everything in a radius of millions of kilometers. But strangely enough, all of the destruction took place in complete silence. A golden lightning sword appeared out of thin air above a desert in the primordial land, somewhere near the dragon, abyss, immortal region. Immediately thereafter, Han Li and Jin Tong appeared beneath the lightning sword amid a burst of spatial fluctuations. That was the same palm strike that Master Myro met his demise to. Looks like Gu Huajin is onto me. Even though Han Li had already anticipated that this day would come, he still couldn't help but feel a little anxious. However, for some reason, this anxiety was also tinged with a hint of excitement. What was that just now? Jin Tong asked in an alarmed manner. It was Gu Huajin. Looks like Xiunyuanjai's death drew his attention, Han Li replied, and Jin Tong's expression changed slightly upon hearing this. Standing in front of the golden palace in the heavenly court, a surprised look appeared on Gu Huajin's face as he remarked, "That was incredibly fast, not much slower than Shi Kongyu's instantaneous teleportation, in fact." However, the scene depicted on the yellow scroll then began to rapidly change, and before long, Han Li and Jin Tong's location were revealed once again. Gu Huajin made a hand seal, then thrust a palm forward. Meanwhile, Han Li inspected his surroundings momentarily before conjuring up another golden lightning formation. He had made an active effort to erase any residual aura of his and Jin Tong's during his teleportation just now, and he had also teleported the two of them over a vast distance, almost spanning an entire large immortal region, so even Gu Huajin's spiritual sense definitely wouldn't have been able to detect them. Even so, he still wanted to teleport once more as a safety precaution. Right at this moment, another giant, golden palm appeared overhead before descending from above, and it was crashing down even faster than the previous one. A stunned look appeared on Han Li's face upon seeing this, and he hurriedly stowed his flying sword away before unleashing his lightning sword teleportation technique again, allowing him and Jin Tong to get away again just barely in the nick of time. Immediately thereafter, the two of them appeared beneath another one of his azure bamboo cloud swarm swords, this one over a mountain range in the heavenly river Immortal region, an immortal region near the dragon, abyss, immortal region. From there, Han Li immediately teleported himself and Jin Tong away once again without pause, and at the same time, he swept a sleeve through the air to release around 24 azure bamboo cloud swarm swords, all of which vanished into the nearby space. Han Li and Jin Tong appeared amid a flash of lightning on the edge of the heavenly river Immortal region, only for him to immediately teleport them away again. After around a dozen consecutive bouts of teleportation, the two of them crossed several immortal regions, only stopping upon reaching an immortal region that was filled with decayed earth and nauseating miasma. Surely this should be far enough, he thought to himself, only for another giant, golden palm to come descending upon him once again, this one even faster than the previous two. A grim look appeared on Han Li's face as he prepared to teleport away again, only for countless rays of golden light to suddenly appear around him, instantly severing his spiritual connection with all of his flying swords. An alarmed look appeared on Han Li's face, but he remained composed as he made a rapid string of hand seals, and a wave of golden light surged out of his body, instantly forming a golden spirit domain that was dozens of kilometers in size. His 5-time law treasures also appeared within the spirit domain before transforming into a miniature world, and he was only just barely able to do all of this before the golden palm fell upon him from above. Countless golden ripples were surging out of the giant palm, causing everything in the surrounding area to fall completely still. Han Li's spirit domain was the only thing that remained unaffected, as if it belonged to a different world. The golden palm crashed down upon the spirit domain, and the latter trembled violently as it was slammed into the ground like an asteroid. The entire continent below shattered violently as vast volumes of molten lava came gushing out from underground, and a series of huge cracks appeared over the spirit domain, but it remained stubbornly intact. Han Li threw up an involuntary mouthful of blood as his spirit domain was crushed into the earth, while a surprised look flashed through Gu Huijin's eyes once again in the heavenly court, seemingly taken aback by the fact that his attack had been kept at bay. With a sweep of his sleeve, a bell-shaped design appeared over the palm of the giant, golden hand, and it instantly swelled to around twice its original size as it closed itself tightly around Han Li's spirit domain, threatening to crush it to a pulp. The cracks all over the spirit domain instantly began to widen, and Han Li hurriedly scrambled to fortify it. A resounding boom rang out as a massive, golden heavenly gate appeared within the spirit domain. During his battle against Feng Qingshui and Chen Ruyan, many innocent lives had been lost as a result of collateral damage, despite his best efforts at preventing such tragedies. This time, Han Li didn't want to repeat the tragedy, so he refrained from opening heavenly gates connected to other realms and immortal regions to draw upon the time law powers within them. This act of selfless kindness granted him a burst of invisible, karmic power, and in that instant, he was struck by a sense of enlightenment as the great 5-elemental illusion mantra became clearer to him than ever before. He quickly capitalized on this spark of inspiration as he made a hand seal, and 5 bursts of golden light emerged from the heavenly gate, corresponding with the 5 elements of the great 5-elemental illusion mantra. The heavenly gates slowly swung open, and a boundless expanse of golden light surged out from within before fusing with the spirit domain. This time, the heavenly Tao was granting even more of its power to Han Li than last time, and the cracks in his spirit domain were instantly stabilized. Han Li was ecstatic to see this, and the 5 bursts of golden light shot out of his spirit domain at his behest, then came together to form the immortal golden cloud, which rose up toward the golden palm outside. At the same time, Jin Tong took on her gold-devouring immortal form as she opened her mouth to release countless streaks of translucent, golden light, which came together to form a huge pillar of light that struck the golden hand with tremendous power. The golden palm was kept at bay by Han Li and Jin Tong's collective power, and as more and more golden light flowed in through the heavenly gate, the cracks in the spirit domain began to rapidly close. Han Li's mind was racing as he scrambled to think of a way out of this predicament while maintaining his spirit domain. He was perfectly capable of eradicating the restrictive time law powers in the surrounding area, but his top priority at the moment was to find out how Gu Huijin was able to track him. Otherwise, he would never be able to truly get away. Given his cautious nature, he was confident that he hadn't left behind anything for Gu Huijin to track him by, and as long as that wasn't the case, then he wasn't the problem. All of a sudden, a thought occurred to him as he turned to Jin Tong and yelled, "Jin Tong, force out the law powers in your body that belong to Xunyu and Jai." Jin Tong faltered slightly upon hearing this, following which a look of realization flashed through her eyes, and she immediately did as she was told, sitting down with her legs crossed to focus on expelling Xunyu and Jai's law powers from her body. Without Jin Tong's help, Han Li was forced to face the full brunt of Gu Huijin's power on his own, and dozens of azure bamboo cloud swarm swords flew out of his body before scattering themselves all over his spirit domain. The flying swords transformed into dozens of giant pillars of lightning that propped up the golden hand, and only then was Han Li able to stop it in its descent. Gu Huijin's brows furrowed slightly upon seeing this, yet before he had a chance to do anything, the palace behind him suddenly began trembling and swaying. A dismayed look appeared on his face as he swept both sleeves through the air, and streaks of golden light appeared around the palace before rapidly intertwining with one another, instantly forming a golden yin-yang diagram that encompassed the entire palace. The tremors running through the palace instantly began to subside, but at the same time, Han Li was also given a brief window of respite. After taking a moment to catch his breath, he turned his gaze to Jin Tong, and a concerned look quickly appeared in his eyes. Even though Jin Tong was currently also a Dao ancestor, her law powers were still inferior to those of a long-established Dao ancestor like Xunyu and Jai, so his law powers were proving rather difficult to expel for her. In order to assist her, Han Li swept a sleeve through the air, and numerous streaks of golden light shot out of his spirit domain before landing on the ground near Jin Tong to form a golden formation that was very similar to the celestial time formation. As soon as the formation commenced operation, it began resonating with the spirit domain around it, instantly accelerating the flow of time within the formation by close to 10,000-fold. In the heavenly court, Gu Huijin continued to make hand seals with one hand to suppress the unrest in the palace while extending the index finger of his other hand to draw a circle, and a massive, golden ring instantly appeared around Han Li's spirit domain. At the same time, a restrictive band of golden light also appeared around Han Li's waist, and he felt as if an incredibly heavy mountain had fallen upon him, making it almost impossible to move his limbs. A hint of fury and indignation surfaced in his eyes as he looked up into the sky, and a series of black patterns spread rapidly over his entire body. In the blink of an eye, he transformed into an almighty devilish deity that stood over 100,000 feet tall, with 12 heads and 36 arms. However, the band of golden light refused to relent, and it remained intact as it released bursts of tremendous restrictive force in an attempt to keep the devilish deity contained. The devilish deity let loose a low roar as the black spirit patterns on its body began to glow with blinding radiance, and bursts of tremendous physical power erupted out of its body, alongside incredibly fearsome time law powers. The golden ring instantly began trembling, and Han Li was able to force it away until a small gap appeared between it and his body. He immediately pounced on this opportunity as he grabbed onto the ring with all 36 of his hands before wrenching it apart forcefully. And the ring was finally overwhelmed as it exploded into countless specks of golden light. The golden ring around the time spirit domain also quickly dissipated, while Hanli sprang up toward the golden palm above. A series of golden patterns appeared over his 36 arms, and they began glowing intently as all of his time law treasures converged toward him before vanishing into his back, forming 5 golden designs that were arranged in a circle. The golden spirit patterns on his arms lit up even further as he lashed out at the golden palm, unleashing 36 great 5 elemental annihilation fists at once. 36 radiant, golden suns appeared beneath the giant palm before exploding violently, sending countless waves of golden light sweeping in all directions as the entire sky collapsed and buckled. The waves of golden light quickly swept over the entire immortal region, causing several continents to collapse, while boundless volumes of molten lava and dirt erupted into the heavens. The nearby space also became severely fractured. While Gu Huijin's restrictive time, law powers were eradicated. Han Li immediately prepared to channel his lightning sword teleportation ability upon seeing this, but right at this moment, a massive, golden hand suddenly descended from above, and it was the same one from before, except it had been slightly reduced in size. A stunned look appeared on Han Li's face upon seeing this. He had retaliated with all his might just now, yet the golden hand had remained largely unaffected. There was no time for him to teleport himself and Jin Tong away, so he had to abandon his plans and turn his attention back to warding off the golden palm. Right at this moment, Jin Tong's eyes abruptly sprang open, and she opened her mouth to release a ball of yellow light that contained earth law powers of an unimaginable degree of purity. The ball of yellow light rose up into the heavens, then dissipated before fusing into the surrounding space, and the golden hand that was swooping down upon Han Li stopped in its tracks, then hesitated momentarily before making a grab for the dissipating yellow light instead. Han Li faltered slightly upon seeing this, then immediately returned to the task at hand, and he and Jin Tong vanished amid a flash of lighting. As the two of them reappeared above a lush forest, Han Li could sense that some type of intangible pressure had been lifted from his shoulders when it had previously followed them everywhere they went. However, as a safety precaution, he teleported several times in succession before finally coming to a rest. "Looks like we've finally shaken him off," Jin Tong said in a relieved manner, and her relief was very much mirrored by Han Li. Following that brief clash from earlier, he had come to realize just how massive the gulf in power between him and Gu Huijin was, and he felt very fortunate to have been able to escape safely on this occasion. "Master, I still need to consolidate my cultivation base, so I want to find a place to cultivate in seclusion before going after Gu Huijin. What about you?" Jin Tong asked. "There's no need to refer to me as Master now that you're a Dao ancestor. Just refer to me as fellow Taoist," Han Li said. A hesitant look appeared on Jin Tong's face upon hearing this. "At our cultivation base, what's the point in obsessing over names and titles? Besides, when have I ever truly treated you like a spirit pet?" Han Li asked with a faint smile. "In that case, please pardon me. What are your plans from here onward, fellow Taoist Han?" Jin Tong asked with a smile. "I also plan to go into a bout of seclusion," Han Li replied. Now that his self-corpse soul had emerged, it had to be addressed, and on top of that, Gu Huijin had already set his sights on him, so he had to attain more power in order to better protect himself. "That's perfect. In that case, we can go into seclusion together, and I'll be able to benefit from your space of accelerated time again," Jin Tong said in an elated manner. "Sure thing," Han Li replied with a nod. A hesitant look then appeared on Jin Tong's face as she asked, "If I'm not mistaken, You're planning to go into seclusion in order to sever your self-corp soul so you can elevate your cultivation base to become a pseudo-Tao ancestor, right? That is indeed my plan. Is there something wrong? Han Li asked. That will certainly grant you more power, but it'll also mean that there's no chance Gu Huijin will allow you to live, Jin Tong warned in a grim manner. At this point, that ship has already sailed. Even if I abandon my cultivation now, it's not like he would be willing to spare me, Han Li replied in a nonchalant manner. That's true, Jin Tong mused with a wry smile. It's only a matter of time before I have to face Gu Huijin in a battle of life and death, and with his and the heavenly court preoccupied with the reincarnation palace, this is the perfect time for me to hone my powers, Han Li said with a faint smile. Jin Tong could see that his mind was already made up, and she didn't speak any further on the subject. Han Li took a glance at his surroundings, and he discovered that they were in quite a large immortal region, one that even his spiritual sense wasn't able to fully encompass. The immortal region primarily consisted of a desert environment, but the world's origin chi here was quite abundant, particularly energy of the earth attribute. Furthermore, the deserts in the immortal region were dotted with fortress-like cities that were very unique and distinctive. Looks like we've arrived in the yellow sand immortal region, Han Li remarked with a hint of surprise on his face. The yellow sand immortal region was one of the 500 medium-sized immortal regions, and it was renowned for being home to many earth attribute materials. Coincidentally, the yellow sand immortal region was also very close to the black soil immortal region and the northern glacial immortal region. Why do you look so surprised? Jin Tong asked in a perplexed manner. It's nothing. If we're going to go into seclusion, then no immortal region will be safe, so let's go to the extra heaven sphere, Han Li said, then swept a sleeve through the air to release a burst of golden light that enveloped them both before quickly racing his way up to the extra heaven sphere. Even after arriving in the extra heaven sphere, he continued to fly onward for a long while before finally coming to a rest. He released his spiritual sense to inspect his surroundings and ensure that it was safe, following which he dug out a cave abode into a giant asteroid. After doing all of that, he opened the flower branch domain before stepping inside with Jin Tong. They were immediately approached by a concerned Nangong Wan who asked, "Are you all right? I sensed some very powerful aura fluctuations outside just now." She then caught sight of Jin Tong, and a warm smile appeared on her face as she said, "You must be Jin Tong. The last time we met, you were still yet to attain a human form, but you've grown up into such a fine beauty." She approached Jin Tong and latched onto her hand as she spoke, but Jin Tong was clearly not very comfortable with the warm reception, and she greeted with a curt nod, "Mistress Nangong." "There's no need to refer to me as mistress. My husband may be your master, but that has nothing to do with me, and given the vast disparity in our cultivation bases, it's only right that you refer to me by name," Nangong Wan said with a smile. Seeing as she had already begun referring to Han Li as fellow Taoist, Jin Tong raised no argument as she extended a curtsy and greeted Nangong Wan as fellow Taoist Nangong instead. Nangong Wan returned the curtsy with a smile, then turned back to Han Li as she repeated, "What happened outside just now?" "I got into a conflict with some people, but it's all taken care of now, so there's nothing for you to worry about," Han Li replied in a nonchalant manner. Jin Tong rolled her eyes internally upon hearing this. Han Li had brushed off the two battles as if they were nothing more than minor scuffles, but he had just gone up against an essential Tao ancestor and the most powerful cultivator under the heavens back to back. Not long ago, the two of them had almost met their demise at the hands of Gu Huijin, but of course, Jin Tong knew that he was intentionally downplaying everything to assuage Nangong Wan's concerns. Judging from the look in her eyes, she clearly wasn't convinced, but she didn't ask any further questions. Wanner, we've found a place to go into seclusion, so we're going to be cultivating for some time. Hanli gave Nangong Wan a brief rundown of his plan, and her eyes instantly lit up as she smiled and said, "That's perfect. I've always wanted to see that space of accelerated time of yours in action." Hanli duly obliged, releasing his spirit domain before activating the celestial time formation, and the flow of time in the flower branch domain was instantly sped up by over 100,000-fold. His mastery over the laws of time had improved significantly once again compared with before, so the space of accelerated time had also become more potent. This is incredible. Time really does live up to its name as one of the three paramount laws, Nangong Wan exclaimed with an amazed expression. Not just anyone with mastery over the laws of time can pull this off. When it comes to the true immortal realm, I wouldn't dare to proclaim that I'm the foremost master of the laws of time, but I can certainly comfortably rank second. As for Gu Huijin, he may be above me, but even he may not have what it takes to create a space of accelerated time like this, Hanli said in a joking manner. Jin Tong was very surprised to see such an unserious side to Hanli, while Nangong Wan rolled her eyes at him in an exasperated manner. "Please excuse me, fellow Taoists, I'm going to go cultivate now," Jin Tong hurriedly said before flying deeper into the flower branch domain, while Han Li and Nangong Wan flew into the bamboo pavilion hand in hand. "Is this going to be a very important stint of seclusion?" Nangong Wan asked. "That's right," Han Li replied with a serious nod. "In that case, don't worry about me, just focus on your own cultivation," Nangong Wan said. Han Li nodded in response, then flipped a hand over to produce a storage tool. "I don't know how long I'll be in seclusion for. There are some pills, immortal origin stones, and other cultivation resources in here, so you can also take this time to cultivate." Nangong Wan accepted the storage tool, then cautioned Han Li to be safe before departing from the pavilion. Following her departure, Han Li began setting up the formation required for his corpse soul severance technique, before setting down the final earthly deity avatar in the formation. After that, he set up multiple layers of restrictions around the pavilion, then sat down with his legs crossed to meditate. Ali. In front of the nameless palace in the heavenly court, Gu Huijin was observing a yellow bead in his hand. The bead was giving off incredibly formidable earth law powers, and he was inspecting it with a pleased smile. However, his expression then immediately stiffened, following which he closed his eyes as if he were sensing something. Moments later, he reopened his eyes and his brows were slightly furrowed as he murmured to himself, "He's gone without a trace. No matter. I've already reached the final step, so it hardly matters whether he gets away or not." Ali. Inside the flower branch domain. After 3 days and 3 nights of meditation, Han Li had primed himself into the best possible physical and mental condition. He took a moment to re-examine the formation around him, then closed his eyes and turned his attention to his consciousness. There was another Han Li sitting inside his consciousness, and he looked up with a calm smile as he said, "You've finally come to see me." He was completely identical to Han Li in appearance, attire, and demeanor, and even their auras were indistinguishable from one another. Han Li's brows furrowed ever so slightly, and his intuition told him that this corpse soul severance was going to be far more difficult than the previous 2. Han Li strode over to his self-corpse soul before sitting down across from him. "Have you come here to sever me?" the self-corpse soul asked, and it was as if he were talking about something completely unrelated to himself. At the same time, he conjured up a stone table between the two of them, upon which were 2 cups of tea. "That's right," Han Li replied, then picked up one of the cups of tea before taking a sip. "In that case, do you know what a self-corpse soul is and how you're supposed to sever me?" the self-corpse soul asked. Han Li was stumped by this question. He knew very little about how one was supposed to sever a self-corpse soul, and even the concept of a self-corpse soul was one that was quite ambiguous to him. He had tried to acquire information pertaining to self-corpse souls through various avenues, but with very limited luck. After all, the self-corpse soul was the final corpse soul to be severed for great encompassment cultivators. So the only people with knowledge on the subject were Tao ancestors or peak great encompassment cultivators. I am yourself, which means that in order to sever me you must kill yourself, the self-corpse soul explained. I'm surprised you're willing to tell me this, Han Li said. Once you're ready to sever me, you'll naturally come to realize this, so there's no need to hide it from you. But before you reach that point, even if you're armed with this knowledge, you won't be able to sever me anyway, the self-corpse soul replied with a smile. You seem very confident, Han Li remarked as his eyes narrowed slightly. Would you be willing to kill your companions in order to sever me? For example, Jin Tong, the self-corpse soul suddenly asked. Why would severing my self-corpse soul require me to kill my friends? Han Li asked as he raised an eyebrow. The self-corpse soul ignored the question as he continued, What about killing your wife? Han Li's expression darkened slightly as he offered no response. How about your parents? The self-corpse soul continued. I think I should start off by killing you, Han Li declared as he rose to his feet before throwing a punch at his self-corpse soul, sending a mountainous, golden fist crashing down upon him. The self-corpse soul shook his head with a faint sigh, then reached a hand out of his sleeve to stop the golden fist cold in its tracks. Han Li lashed out with his other fist upon seeing this while simultaneously conjuring up his time spirit domain, and the self-corpse soul did the same. Han Li's other fist struck the self-corpse soul's spirit domain, and its power was completely nullified. The two spirit domains were also evenly matched, with neither one able to get the better of the other. You and I are equal in both cultivation base and abilities, so I suggest you save your energy. If you want to sever me, then go and understand what the concept of self is first, the self-corpse soul said with a faint smile. Han Li paid no heed to him as he swept a sleeve through the air, sending dozens of streaks of lightning swordlight racing toward the self-corpse soul. The self-corpse soul's brows furrowed slightly upon seeing this, and an identical number of lightning sword projections appeared beside him to meet the oncoming attack. A fierce battle ensued between the two, and just as the self-corpse soul had said, the two of them were completely evenly matched. Around half a month flew by in a flash, and their battle finally concluded when both of them were too exhausted to continue. Han Li gave a cold harumph before departing from his consciousness, and he was struck by a sense of intense fatigue as soon as his consciousness returned to his body. The battle against his self-corpse soul had been extremely taxing on his soul, and he quickly closed his eyes to rest and recuperate. Around half a month later, Han Li reappeared in his own consciousness. Welcome back, fellow Taoist Han. Here for a rematch, the self-corpse soul asked with a smile, and it had clearly also made a full recovery. That's right, but before that I have something to ask you, Han Li replied. Go ahead, the self-corpse soul prompted. Last time you said that in order to sever you, I have to kill my friends, my wife, and my parents. Why is that? Han Li asked. That's something that you'll have to find out for yourself, the self-corpse soul replied with a smile. Clearly, he knew the answer, but wasn't planning to reveal it. Han Li was silent for a moment, then sprang forward as he thrust a fist through the air, conjuring up a mountainous, golden fist projection that was imbued with devastating power. The self-corpse soul remained unfazed as he thrust a palm forward in response, releasing waves upon waves of palm projections to oppose the oncoming attack. The golden fist projection tore through hundreds of palm projections in succession before it was finally eradicated, immediately following which Han Li appeared behind the Self-Corp Soul amid a flash of lightning, before lashing out with both fists at once. Two great five elemental annihilation fists instantly came crashing down upon the Self-Corp Soul. But once again, the Self-Corp Soul was completely unflustered, as a burst of golden light surged out of his body before forming a tornado-like light barrier around him. The two great five elemental annihilation fists struck the light barrier and were instantly sent flying back, as if they had just bounced off a soft wall, while the golden light barrier shuddered violently before fading away. I see what you're doing. You're trying to hone your control over your law powers by fighting me, right? You've been progressing too rapidly in your cultivation base, and as a result, your control over your newfound law powers is lagging behind. That's something that you'll have to address if you want to be able to oppose Gu Huijin, and I'll admit that fighting me is a good way to achieve this objective, the Self-Corp Soul chuckled. Han Li offered no response. This was indeed one of his objectives, while his other objective was to try and gather more information about Self-Corp Souls through interacting with his own. Regardless of how tight-lipped the Self-Corp Soul remained, Han Li was confident that he would be able to gather some information through their battles. With that in mind, Han Li continued to lash out in an aimless fashion, while the Self-Corp Soul warded off his attacks with ease. While that's a sound plan, you better be careful in your execution. If you're slain by me during one of our battles, then this body will be mine. Honestly, that's not going to change much anyway. After all, you and I are one and the same, the Self-Corp Soul said with a smile. The battle raged on for several days, only drawing to a conclusion once both of them were completely exhausted. Several days later, Han Li returned, and this cycle repeated itself over and over again. Before long, 10,000 years had flown by. Inside Han Li's consciousness, two blurry, golden figures were clashing over and over again, both moving far too quickly to be tracked with the naked eye. All types of fist projections, palm projections, sword chi, and other attacks were racing through the air, and all of a sudden, a resounding boom rang out, following which both combatants sprang back in retreat. Golden light was flashing radiantly over Han Li's body as he thrust a fist through the air, and numerous golden fist projections erupted out of his entire body, not just his fist. Every single fist projection was a great five elemental annihilation fist, and they varied in length and thickness, intertwining with one another to form an enormous net that descended from above, leaving no room for retreat or evasion. The Self-Corp Soul made no attempt at evasion as he pointed a finger at the vast net of fist projections, and everything around him turned a dull, gray color as a burst of unmatched power was unleashed, clashing against the net of fist projections. All of the fist projections were instantly destroyed, while Han Li and his Self-Corp Soul were both sent flying back once again, and as usual, neither one was able to get the better of the other. The battle intent had already drained from Han Li's eyes, and he didn't make any further moves. "You don't want to continue?" the Self-Corp Soul asked. "There's not much point in continuing, so I'll be taking my leave now," Han Li replied, then vanished from the spot. The two of them had fought countless battles against each other over the past 10,000 years, and their relationship had changed in subtle ways during that time. Not only were they equal in power, even their personalities were identical, and they had developed a friendly rivalry over the years. After Han Li's consciousness returned to his body, he closed his eyes in a weary manner and took some time to rest and recuperate. After making a recovery, he didn't re-enter his own consciousness to challenge his Self-Corp Soul again. His mastery over his time, law powers had reached a limit, and it wasn't going to improve through further battles. With that in mind, he flipped a hand over to produce a black, leather-bound book that had the appearance of an ancient artifact. This was a book that he had managed to secure by chance through a trade in the Reincarnation Palace, and it was said to have been a journal kept by a descendant of a Tao ancestor, containing some stories of said Tao ancestor. Of course, Han Li was most interested in the part of the journal that described the Tao ancestor's self-corpse soul severance. Even though that part of the journal only spanned several hundred words, it had provided him with some inspiration and led him to think of some things that he had never considered before. According to the journal, the Tao ancestor had spent over 1,000 years searching for the true meaning of self. In the process, he had returned to the original site of the first sect that he had joined in his cultivation journey, and he had sat there in meditation for 100 days. In Han Li's eyes, that was perhaps an attempt made by the Tao ancestor to return to his earliest self, back when he first embarked on the path of cultivation. Over the past 10,000 years, he had also exchanged some insights and ideas with Jin Tong, but Jin Tong hadn't had to sever any corpse souls in this lifetime, so she wasn't able to provide him with much assistance. Han Li quickly read through the entire book, then closed it before rising to his feet. It seemed that he had arrived at some type of decision, and he stepped out of the pavilion. Nangong Wan had also constructed a pavilion outside for her own seclusion. Thanks to the resources bestowed upon her by Han Li and the incredible abundance of the world's origin chi in the flower branch domain, she had already reached the pinnacle of the true immortal stage, leaving her on the cusp of the golden immortal stage. Han Li called out to her through voice transmission, and she immediately awakened from her cultivation before stepping outside to meet him. "Have you concluded your seclusion? Did you make much progress?" "I'm afraid my progress has been very limited. I'm planning to go out on a trip. Would you care to accompany me?" Han Li asked as he latched onto her hand. "Sure. I've never had a chance to explore the true immortal realm since my ascension," Nangong Wan replied in an elated manner. "Once I leave the flower branch domain, this space of accelerated time will disappear. Would you like to accompany us, fellow Taoist Jin?" Han Li asked. "I'll leave you two to enjoy your excursion without my pesky presence," Jin Tong replied from afar. Han Li respected Jin Tong's wishes, withdrawing his spirit domain before emerging from the flower branch domain with Nangong Wan. The latter had never seen the extra heaven sphere before, and she began looking around with an amazed expression. With a sweep of his sleeve, Han Li released a burst of golden light that picked up Nangong Wan, and he began telling her about the extra heaven sphere while flying onward. After flying for close to half a month, he embarked on a descent, and they quickly reached the ground. They had descended upon a turbulent Black Sea, and the world's origin chi in the surrounding environment was rather sparse. Nestled in the waves in the distance was a small island with many residents, and the entire island was enshrouded within layers of advanced restrictions. "What is this place?" Nangong Wan asked in a curious manner. "This place is the Black Wind Sea, and that island is called Dark Veil Island. This is where I ended up the second time I ascended to the true immortal realm," Han Li replied as a reminiscent look appeared on his face. Han Li had already told Nangong Wan about Black Wind Island in the past, and at the moment, she was carefully scouring her gaze over the island, comparing it with the details that Han Li had divulged to her in the past. Han Li descended onto the surface of the sea near Dark Veil Island, then began looking around as if he were searching for something, while Nangong Wan stood silently off to the side to avoid distracting him. Han Li walked around the island for a long while before returning to Nangong Wan's side, and the two of them promptly departed. He flew along at a rather slow pace, seemingly thinking about something the entire time, and occasionally he would point out to her some places along the way that were of significance to him. Several days later, the two of them arrived at Black Wind Island. No introduction was required, as Nangongwan was able to identify the island from the symbols within Black Wind City. This is the city that's home to the teleportation formations leading to the outside world, right? Nangongwan asked. That's right. This place hasn't changed much at all over the years, Hanli mused. It seemed that the Grey Realm invasion hadn't had much of an impact on this city. As the two of them entered the city, Han Li began to inspect the surrounding streets with keen interest. "What are you looking for?" Nangongwan asked. "Right now, I'm faced with the hurdle of having to sever my self-corp's soul, and the key to that is my mental state. Hence, I'm planning to retrace my steps and visit all of the places I've been since my ascension to reminisce about the past and hone my mental state," Han Li explained. These were all very foreign concepts to Nangongwan, but she nodded in response, trusting that Han Li knew what he was doing. The two of them stayed in Black Wind City for 2 days, during which Han Li gave her a tour of the city while pointing out the places of interest. After leaving Black Wind City, they crossed through the soul-stirring winds to arrive on the primordial wave continent. Close to a year later, the two of them retraced Han Li's journey to the Blaze Dragon Dao on the ancient Cloud continent. This was the first sect that Han Li had officially joined following his ascension to the true Immortal realm, and he had stayed and cultivated here for a very long time. To his surprise, the current Blaze Dragon Dao was a far cry from its heyday. There were very few disciples left in the sect, and the entire place was looking rather drab and dilapidated. After briefly scouring the sect with his spiritual sense, Han Li quickly determined the reason for its decline. The northern glacial immortal region was a small immortal region to begin with, and even though the Blaze Dragon Dao had once been a top-tier sect in the immortal region, it had suffered a heavy blow in the wake of the Bailey Yan incident. Shortly thereafter, almost all of the Blaze Dragon Dao cultivators who had entered the Infernal Frost Immortal Palace had perished, and that was the beginning of the Blaze Dragon Dao's decline. Of course, the Vast Flow Palace and the Dawn Fall sect had also been negatively impacted. After that, the three sects had been dealt another heavy blow by the Grey Realm's invasion of the northern glacial immortal region, and that was what had reduced the Blaze Dragon Dao to its current, pitiful state. Henley heaved an internal sigh as he cast a concealment technique upon himself and Nangongwan before making his way to the Crimson Dawn Peak, where he had previously stayed. The Crimson Dawn Peak looked much the same as when he had left it, and it seemed that no one else had stayed here after him. Henley sat down on the summit of the Crimson Dawn Peak and reminisced over the time that he had spent cultivating in the Blaze Dragon Dao, including his resolve to pursue the laws of time, his urgent desire to find Taoist Zai, and the constant fear that he felt of being tracked down by his enemies. He reminisced about those emotions over and over again, and as he did so, the memories from that time became clearer and clearer. His past self was like a mirror that reflected his truest self. As he continued to reminisce, he developed a clearer and clearer understanding of his own heart, and he gradually came to glean the true meaning of self. He sat for half a month straight, and all the while, Nangongwan remained by his side in silence. On this day, as the final ray of light from the dying sun faded away, Han Li rose to his feet with a faint smile on his face. Nangongwan could sense that something about his disposition had changed, but she couldn't put her finger on exactly what had changed. Looks like cultivation for great encompassment cultivators really does primarily involve cultivation of the heart, she thought to herself. "Let's go," Han Li said, and the two of them promptly departed. Ali. On the border of the northern glacial immortal region, primordial origin city stood like a prowling, giant beast. Outside the city was a vast, yellow desert that stretched as far as the eyes could see, and Han Li and Nangongwan were sitting in the air above, observing the city and the desert below. Ali. Two streaks of light were flying through the primordial land between the northern glacial Immortal region and the Black Mountain Immortal region at a leisurely pace, seemingly on a sightseeing tour. Ali. Black Mountain Immortal region, Floating Cloud Mountain Range, Leisure Valley. Due to its close proximity to the northern glacial Immortal region, the Black Mountain Immortal region had been heavily impacted by the Grey Realm invasion. At the moment, the Leisure Valley was completely deserted, and even Mo Wuxu and Yu Ziki, who had chosen to remain here, were nowhere to be found. Han Li and Nangong Wan were seated at the stone platform where everyone had frequently gathered in the past, drinking some wine together. Ali. Black Soil Immortal Region, Illusory Smoke Swamp. Han Li and Nangong Wan were drifting their way over the swamp, and all of the mist in the air instantly parted in their presence. This is where the entrance to the true Mantra sect ruins is, right? I don't see any mist that conjures up illusions, Nangong Wan said. That type of mist only appears at certain times, Han Li explained. His appearance remained unchanged, but his disposition had changed drastically, and there was an aura of sharpness about him, one that seemed to be able to sever anything. An indescribable sense of pressure was emanating from his body, causing all of the living beings within a radius of hundreds of kilometers to hide in the swamp in a fearful manner. Do you think we'll still be able to enter the true Mantra sect ruins now? I'm very curious to see what it looks like, Nangong Wan said. The true Mantra sect ruins have already been devoured by a spatial rift, so I don't think it'll ever be seen again, Han Li replied with a shake of his head. In that case, where do we go from here? The Grey Realm. How are we supposed to get there now that the true Mantra sect ruins have vanished? Nangong Wan asked. We'll skip the Grey Realm, Han Li replied. He was only able to travel to the Grey Realm all those years ago through a spatial passageway in the true Mantra sect ruins. The Grey Realm was a very distant realm, and now that the spatial passageway was inaccessible, it would be quite difficult to get there, even at his cultivation base. Not only that, but the Devil Realm was also off limits. With the demise of Taoist Zai, the entire Devil Realm had fallen into the hands of the devilish monarch. If he were to go there now and be discovered by the devilish monarch, then he would be landing himself in a great deal of trouble. Following this period of reminiscence and mental cultivation, his understanding of the concept of self had deepened significantly, and by his estimates, his chances of a successful corpse soul severance were already quite high. Hence, he was considering whether it was time to make an attempt. Right at this moment, a streak of light appeared on the horizon before flying toward them. Han Li wasn't all that surprised to see this. The illusory smoke swamp was quite abundant in the world's origin chi, and it was home to many spirit materials, so there were often cultivators venturing into the swamp to search for treasures. Han Li didn't want to meet with any strangers for fear that it would impact his mental state, and he was just about to depart with Nangong Wan when a look of surprise suddenly appeared on his face. Immediately thereafter, he began flying directly toward the streak of light with Nangong Wan in tow. The cultivator within the streak of light was rather alarmed by this, and he hurriedly stopped in his tracks, revealing himself to be a white-robed elderly man. The streak of golden light faded away to reveal Han Li and Nangong Wan, and a stunned look appeared on the elderly man's face as he exclaimed, "Li Fei Yu. Long time no see, fellow Taoist Hu Yan. I didn't think we would ever meet again," Han Li said with a smile. The elderly man was none other than Taoist Hu Yan. Likewise, Taoist Hu Yan exclaimed, "You must have made some very significant strides in your cultivation. I can't see through your cultivation base at all. What's your current cultivation base?" "I've been very fortunate and stumbled upon some opportunities over the years that allowed me to advance in my cultivation. On the contrary, it looks like your cultivation base has regressed. Have you encountered some problems with your cultivation? Han Li asked. At the moment, Taoist Hu Yan was only at the mid-true immortal stage. It's not a big deal. At their core, things like wealth and cultivation base are no more significant than the dirt upon which we stand, Taoist Hu Yan chuckled, and he truly seemed unbothered. You're still as wise and insightful as ever, fellow Taoist Han Li. Han Li praised with a smile. Wise my arse. I've just drunk too much wine and become so permanently inebriated that I don't care about anything anymore, Taoist Hu Yan chortled. Meanwhile, Nangong Wan was observing this interaction with a hint of surprise in her eyes. In her memories, Han Li had always been quite serious and stoic, and it was very rare to see him engage in such a relaxed and casual conversation with anyone. Furthermore, she could tell that the two of them were on very good terms with one another. "Who's this beautiful companion of yours?" Taoist Hu Yan asked with a meaningful look in his eyes. "This is Wanner, my Tao partner. Wanner, this is fellow Taoist Hu Yan, someone who has helped me greatly in the past," Han Li introduced. "Greetings, fellow Taoist Hu Yan. My name is Nangong Wan. Thank you for looking after my husband," Nangong Wan said as she extended a curtsy. "It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance, celestial maiden Nangong," Taoist Hu Yan said as he cupped his fist in a salute while making faces at Han Li. "How about we find a place to have a drink together, fellow Taoist Hu Yan?" Han Li proposed with a smile. "Yes, please. If you don't mind, we can share a drink in my humble abode," Taoist Hu Yan said with a beaming smile. "That sounds great. I hope your wine brewing skills haven't regressed over the years," Han Li jibed. Taoist Hu Yan was one of his few close friends, so he was eager to catch up with him. Taoist Hu Yan was so ecstatic that it looked as if he were on the verge of breaking into dance, and he declared, "My cultivation base may have regressed, but I can assure you that my wine brewing skills are as sharp as ever. Come with me." With Taoist Hu Yan leading the way, Han Li and Nangong Wan were taken to a mountain range with many giant peaks that stretched all the way up into the clouds. However, the world's origin qi in the environment was quite sparse, and there weren't many demon beasts in the area either, making the entire place feel rather barren and lifeless. With nothing to be gained, the area was naturally very rarely frequented by any cultivators. As soon as Taoist Hu Yan entered this mountain range, he immediately became much more relaxed. Occasionally, he would recite some poetry for his own entertainment, or point out some noteworthy landmarks in the mountain range to Han Li and Nangong Wan. Initially, Han Li wasn't paying much attention, but he noticed that Nangong Wan was listening with keen interest, and she would point out some discoveries of her own from time to time, thoroughly impressing Taoist Hu Yan in the process. Thus, he also became more involved in the conversation, raising some viewpoints and observations of his own to spark discussions between them. Under this jovial atmosphere, the three of them wandered through the mountain range for close to an entire day, before finally descending in front of an obscure mountain. Even from very far away, Han Li had been able to tell that this mountain was different from the rest. It wasn't that the mountain itself was different from the other mountains. Instead, the difference was that some very advanced restrictions had been set up around it, ones that would have been undetectable to the vast majority of cultivators below the high zenith stage. Taoist Hu Yan flipped a hand over to produce a white badge, which he waved through the air to send a streak of white light vanishing into the space up ahead. A white rift appeared amid a burst of spatial fluctuations, and it was impossible to see anything within it aside from a boundless expanse of white light. "Come in," Taoist Hu Yan invited as he stepped into the white rift, and Han Li and Nangong Wan followed suit. In the blink of an eye, they had appeared in a peaceful valley, within which several intricate bamboo buildings had been constructed. On one side of the valley was a bamboo forest and a small creek connected to a pond, with many spirit beasts resting around it. On the other side were several plots of spirit farmland that were being tended to by two figures. The two figures looked up from their work before approaching Han Li's trio, and they were none other than Yun Nai and Bai Sayuan. The former had already reached the late golden immortal stage, while the latter had also become a golden immortal. Furthermore, judging from her aura fluctuations, it was clear that she was using some very profound cultivation arts. Long time no see, fellow Taoist Li. Hu Yan has missed you greatly over the years. Whenever he has a drink, he always brings you up while reminiscing about your time together. Yun Nai greeted with a warm smile. It has indeed been far too long, fellow Taoist Yun, Han Li said as he cupped his fist in a salute. I was never able to repay you for taking me to the Blaze Dragon Dao, so please accept this gesture of gratitude from me, Senior Li, Bai Sayuan said as she extended a curtsy. No need for formalities, fellow Taoist Bai, Han Li said with a faint smile as he casually swept a sleeve through the air, and Bai Sayuan was involuntarily returned to an upright posture by a burst of invisible force. She was clearly quite taken aback by this, and she took a quick glance at Han Li before turning to Nangong Wan with a smile and a contemplative look in her eyes, seemingly guessing at how she had been fortunate enough to have become Han Li's Dao partner. As for Yun Nai, she was stunned by the ease with which Han Li was able to bring a golden immortal like Bai Sayuan out of her curtsy. This was something that was beyond the capabilities of even the average high zenith cultivator. Han Li introduced Nangong Wan to Yun Nai and Bai Sayuan, and they exchanged some small talk before making their way up to the second floor of one of the bamboo buildings. The interior of the building was quite spacious, and the furnishings were quite simple but still elegant and refined. From the vantage point of the second floor, one was able to see the entire valley, and it was quite a pleasant sight to behold. After everyone had taken a seat, Han Li asked Taoist Hu Yan why they had chosen to settle here. It's a long story. We were already residing in a peaceful location in the northern glacial immortal region, but we were forced to leave due to the Grey Realm invasion. Unfortunately, fellow Taoist Fengyi met her demise around that time, and it was only after a great deal of hassle that we were able to make it to the Black Soil immortal region. Taoist Hu Yan sighed in a forlorn manner, while Yun Nai and Bai Sayuan were also looking rather dejected. Han Li heaved an internal sigh upon hearing this. Many immortal regions had been impacted by the Grey Realm invasion, and Bai Fengyi was but one of countless casualties that would have resulted from the invasion. Meanwhile, the heavenly court remained focused on preparing for the Badhai banquet, and it seemed that no one really cared about what was happening in these small and insignificant immortal regions. Perhaps in the eyes of the heavenly court, the cultivators of these small immortal regions were no more significant than ants. After we arrived on the Black Soil immortal region, we heard that this illusory smoke swamp was home to the true Mantra sect ruins, but after those ruins were demolished by the heavenly court several thousand years ago, the swamp has been largely deserted, so we decided to settle here. What do you think? It's not a bad place, right? Taoist Hu Yan asked. It is indeed a fine place, tucked away from the bothers of the outside world, Han Li replied with a nod, then turned to take a glance at Nangong Wan, who just so happened to have also been looking back at him, as a hint of longing flashed through her eyes. Han Li heaved an internal sigh as he rested a hand on top of hers. He knew that while the attainment of immortality was one of the main incentives for her ascension to the true immortal realm, another major motivating factor was to be reunited with him. Even though she had never verbally expressed it to him, he could sense the weariness that she felt deep in her heart. After cultivating arduously for so many years, one could be forgiven for thinking that reaching the true immortal stage was the conclusion of one's journey, but who could have imagined that it was actually just the beginning of an even longer and more arduous journey? Thankfully, she had always been quite strong of will, and she knew that she had no choice but to continue onward if she wanted to be able to remain by Han Li's side. During this spate of wanderlust, Han Li had been able to clearly sense the depth of Nangong Wan's feelings for him and how much she had cherished their time together, and the thought of this never failed to warm his heart. Nangong Wan could sense what Han Li was trying to convey to her through his eyes, and she gave him a slight nod as a look of resolve surfaced in her own eyes. It was only a fleeting shared glance, but it held more meaning than an extensive conversation. Taoist Hu Yan began asking Han Li about his experiences since they last parted ways. The three of them had been living in seclusion ever since they arrived in the Black Soil Immortal region, so they weren't aware that Han Li was a wanted fugitive of the Heavenly Court. Han Li didn't want to involve them in his mess, so he told them that he had been cultivating in the Black Mountain Immortal region this entire time, and that he had come to the illusory smoke swamp in search of the true Mantra sect ruins. By the way, you mentioned that the Heavenly Court destroyed the true Mantra sect ruins here several thousand years ago. Why did they do that? Han Li asked. Bai Sayuan had been listening in silence this entire time, and she suddenly interjected. This is something that I found out from a nearby sect. Apparently, several groups of people from different powers, including the Heavenly Court, came to the Black Mountain Immortal region at the time, and they searched through the entirety of the true Mantra sect ruins. It's unclear whether they found what they were looking for, but in the process, the entire place was demolished. That does sound like something the Heavenly Court would do, Han Li mused, then changed the subject as he asked, Fellow Taoist Hu Yan, why has your cultivation base regressed by so much? Yun Nai's expression changed slightly upon hearing this, but she didn't say anything, while Bai Sayuan lowered her head. There's not much of a story to tell. Back when we first arrived in the Black Soil Immortal region, I encountered an enemy of roughly the same cultivation base as myself. I was able to wound him and force him into retreat, but I also sustained severe injuries of my own that resulted in a significant regression in cultivation base. Taoist Hu Yan explained with a smile, seemingly completely unbothered by his current condition. I see, Han Li replied with a nod. He could tell that Taoist Hu Yan was keeping something from him, but he didn't ask any questions as he didn't want to pry. That's enough questions from you, kid. Let's get back to what's important. I've collected some spirit ingredients from the Black Soil Immortal region over the years to brew several types of wine. Let's have a taste together, Taoist Hu Yan said with a wide smile. Hu Yan, don't be so rude, Yun Nai hurriedly interjected. Han Li's unfathomable cultivation base had not escaped her notice, and she was worried that Taoist Hu Yan's flippant remarks would be met with dire consequences. Don't worry so much. If fellow Taoist Li is the type of person to get hung up on such little things, then he wouldn't have been able to reach such staggering heights in such a short time, Taoist Hu Yan said with a nonchalant smile. Indeed, fellow Taoist Hu Yan, we're all friends sharing a drink here, so why bother ourselves with formalities and social norms? Han Li said with a wide smile of his own. Yun Nai was rather taken aback to hear this, but she was naturally very pleased and relieved by Han Li's gracious reaction. Taoist Hu Yan asked Yun Nai and Bai Sayuan to take Nangong Wan on a tour of the valley, while he dragged Han Li to a short bamboo building situated in a corner of the valley. It was the most unremarkable bamboo building of the lot, but it was filled with all types of gourds, jars, and flagons, as well as wine cups of all types of different materials. After entering the building, it was as if Taoist Hu Yan had transformed into an entirely different person, and he began giving Han Li an extensive introduction to his collection of wine and wine-brewing paraphernalia. It seemed that he derived more joy from talking about his collection than he would from a major increase in cultivation base. Only now did Han Li feel like the Taoist Hu Yan of old was back. Looks like you've made some fantastic additions to your collection over the years, fellow Taoist Hu Yan, Han Li remarked with a smile. I've collected a lot of fine wine, but unfortunately, I haven't had anyone to share it with. Now that you're here, we can drink to our heart's content, Taoist Hu Yan declared. Han Li naturally raised no objections to this, and the two of them sat down across the table from one another, sampling Taoist Hu Yan's prized collection while chatting about the past. Before long, both of them were a little tipsy, and Han Li told Taoist Hu Yan about the current state of the Blaze Dragon Dao. Taoist Hu Yan had stayed in the Blaze Dragon Dao far longer than Han Li, and he couldn't help but be saddened by this news. Once this storm has blown over, you can return to the northern glacial Immortal region to revitalize the Blaze Dragon Dao if you're interested. Don't worry about resources. I can give you all the help you need in that department, Han Li offered. He was indebted to the Blaze Dragon Dao, as that was where he had obtained the Mantra Axis scripture, and given his current wealth, supporting a small sect like the Blaze Dragon Dao was a piece of cake. Taoist Hu Yan took a surprised glance at Han Li upon hearing this, then smiled as he said, "You must really have made something out of yourself if you're willing to make such a bold declaration. It's fine, just let nature run its course. If a sect is destined to fall, then there's no point in trying to forcibly reverse its fortunes. Your personality has remained the same, but your style of doing things has changed quite a bit," Han Li remarked in a contemplative manner. "I've experienced many things, and in particular, suffering this regression in cultivation base has made me realize that there's no real importance to many of the things that I had clung onto stubbornly in the past," Taoist Hu Yan replied with a smile. A thoughtful look appeared on Han Li's face upon hearing this. "The current me is no longer the past me, and as for what the future holds, that's not something I can predict, nor is it something that I want to find out, as I'm no longer fixated on the future me. There is wine in my cup right now, and that's all I want to focus on," Taoist Hu Yan said, then downed the contents of his cup in one go. "You're right. Many things that we regard as important are actually nothing more than manifestations of our fixations of the past, the present, and the future. In reality, they hold no inherent importance," Han Li murmured as a hint of enlightenment flashed through his eyes. Taoist Hu Yan raised an eyebrow in a perplexed manner, wondering what had suddenly come over Han Li. "From the moment that we first set foot on the path of cultivation and began absorbing the world's origin qi, our bodies have already been severed from their mortal ties, and they're constantly changing over time. Essentially, we are turning into different people from one moment to the next, so there's no permanence in the concept of self. However, that does not mean that we don't exist," Han Li continued as his eyes lit up with the glow of an epiphany. Taoist Hu Yan shook his head and paid no further heed to Han Li, as he drank 3 more cups of wine by himself in succession. "Thank you, fellow Taoist Hu Yan," Han Li said as he abruptly rose to his feet before extending a grateful bow toward Taoist Hu Yan. "What for?" Taoist Hu Yan asked as he hurriedly sprang to his feet in an alarmed manner. "What you said to me just now has allowed me to overcome a mental hurdle in my cultivation," Han Li replied. Taoist Hu Yan faltered slightly upon hearing this, then burst into laughter, and he didn't ask for further elaboration. From there onward, the two of them fully immersed themselves in drinking and reminiscing about the past, making no further mention of any subjects related to cultivation. All of the immortal wines in Taoist Hu Yan's collection contained a great deal of immortal spiritual power, and given his current cultivation base, it didn't take long before he fell into a drunken slumber. Han Li moved Taoist Hu Yan onto the bed with a sweep of his sleeve, then inspected his internal condition with his spiritual sense, upon which his brows furrowed slightly in befuddlement. After that he emerged from the room, and at this point it was already late at night. It was very peaceful in the valley, and it seemed that Nangong Wan, Yun Nai, and Bai Sayuan had all already retired for the night. It had been a very long time since Han Li had been able to enjoy a moment of peace like this to himself, and he began taking a stroll through the valley. Right at this moment, Bai Sayuan emerged from the bamboo forest up ahead, having changed into a white dress, and she called out in a gentle voice, "Senior Li." "Why are you still up so late at night, fellow Taoist Bai?" Han Li asked. Bai Sayuan was silent for a moment, then asked, "Given your lofty cultivation base, I'm sure you've already managed to identify Senior Hu Yan's current ailments, right? Fellow Taoist Hu Yan's essential energy is severely depleted, and it doesn't look like something that would result from an injury. I've only ever seen similar symptoms in some cultivators who have transmitted their own essential energy into others," Han Li replied. "Your assessment is correct, Senior Li. Senior Hu Yan's cultivation base regression didn't come as a result of his injuries. Instead, it was all because of me," Bai Sayuan said in a quiet voice. Han Li wasn't surprised to hear this, and he waited patiently for her to continue. "Senior Hu Yan was indeed wounded in a battle not long after we arrived in the Black Mountain Immortal region, but they were relatively inconsequential injuries that he could have recovered from with some rest and recuperation. However, I was too fixated on seeking vengeance for our clan's matriarch, Senior Bai Fengyi, that I attempted a breakthrough to the golden immortal stage before I was fully ready. As a result, my meridians were thrown into a state of disarray, and I was on the verge of death. In order to save me, Senior Hu Yan transmitted his essential energy into my body to help me suppress my injuries and successfully reach the golden immortal stage, at the expense of dire consequences for himself," Bai Sayuan explained in a forlorn manner. "I see," Han Li sighed. All of a sudden, Bai Sayuan stepped forward and fell to her knees before Han Li. "Senior Hu Yan's current condition can't be treated by anyone below the high zenith stage. I'm sure you've already reached the high zenith stage, so please help him. In exchange, I'm willing to remain by your side as a servant for as long as I live," Bai Sayuan implored as tears began to well up in her eyes. Han Li raised an eyebrow as he swept a sleeve through the air to bring Bai Sayuan back to her feet, following which he said, "Fellow Taoist Hu Yan is a close friend of mine, and he has just done me a significant favor, so I would have cured his condition even if you hadn't asked me to." He summoned a white jade vial as he spoke, then offered it to Bai Sayuan. An ecstatic look appeared on her face as she accepted the vial in a timid manner, and even through the vial, she was greeted by a fragrant, medicinal aroma. The vial contains 10 Immortal Origin Enhancement Pills, which are very potent for restoring essential energy. Have fellow Taoist Hu Yan take one every 10 days, and he'll be able to recover his lost essential energy in no more than 2 months. As long as he works diligently in his cultivation from there, he should be able to return to his former cultivation base very soon, Han Li said. "Thank you, Senior Li," Bai Sayuan exclaimed in an ecstatic manner as she fell to her knees again. "You can go now," Han Li said with a dismissive wave, then continued on his stroll. Bai Sayuan hesitated momentarily, then extended a grateful bow toward him before departing. Before long, Han Li had arrived at a small pergola deep in a bamboo forest, and Nangong Wan was standing inside. "Why were you so cold to her? She was prepared to stay by your side as a servant for life as repayment," Nangong Wan said with a hint of a smile on her face. Han Li shook his head with a smile as he latched onto her hand and said, "That vial of Immortal Origin Enhancement Pills will be enough to treat Taoist Hu Yan's condition, so the favor has been repaid. With that, our karmic ties with this place have been severed, so it's time for us to go." Immediately thereafter, the two of them vanished from the valley amid a flash of lightning. In the next instant, the two of them appeared in the sky above the valley, and Nangong Wan asked, "Where do we go from here?" "The extra heaven sphere," Han Li replied as he raced up into the heavens with Nangong Wan in tow. It didn't take long for them to reach the extra heaven sphere, following which Han Li created another temporary cave abode in a safe area. The two of them entered the flower branch domain, and Nangong Wan asked, "Are you going to continue your cultivation from before?" Han Li nodded in response. "I can't help you with your cultivation, but I'm sure you'll succeed," Nangong Wan said with an encouraging smile. "Your encouragement is the biggest help you can give me," Han Li said as he wound his arms around her, then planted a gentle kiss on her forehead before making his way into his bamboo pavilion. All of the restrictions on the floor of the pavilion were still operating as normal, and Han Li sat down with his legs crossed to meditate. After taking a day and a night to prime himself into the best mental and physical condition, he entered his own consciousness again. As usual, his self-corpse soul was seated inside, but this time, as he raised his head to look up at Han Li, he immediately noticed that there was something different about him. "You've made significant strides in your mental state. Looks like you're serious about severing me this time," the self-corpse soul remarked. "That's right," Han Li declared, wasting no time as he summoned his spirit domain. To his surprise, the self-corpse soul made no attempt at evasion, simply allowing Han Li's spirit domain to descend upon him. Immediately thereafter, a burst of translucent light flashed over Han Li's glabella, and countless translucent chains instantly shot out of thin air around his self-corpse soul before binding him to the spot. The self-corpse soul didn't seem concerned by this at all, and there was even a composed smile on his face. All of a sudden, everything around Han Li descended into complete darkness, and his self-corpse soul was suddenly nowhere to be seen. "Is this an illusion?" Han Li immediately channeled his spirit refinement technique, while simultaneously releasing his tremendous spiritual sense, which took on the form of a series of giant swords that slashed through the air surrounding space. However, the giant spiritual sense swords were merely devoured by the surrounding space without even the slightest ripple, much to Han Li's alarm. Given how immense his spiritual sense was, even an illusion created by the illusory Tao ancestor shouldn't have been impervious to his powers. Right at this moment, the surrounding scene suddenly transformed, and he found himself in the air above a pool of viscous blood that was giving off a nauseating stench. All of a sudden, 5 menacing ghostly creatures sprang out of the pool before pouncing at him. These ghostly creatures were extremely horrific in appearance, with their bodies riddled with putrid ulcers that were constantly spewing forth blood-infused pus, and each of them had 7 or 8 arms, the fingers of which were tipped with sharp claws of different lengths. It was as if they were the amalgamation of all that was horrific and hideous in this world, presenting a truly harrowing sight to behold. Han Li's expression remained completely unchanged at the sight of the 5 ghostly creatures, and 5 azure bamboo cloud-swarm swords shot out of his body amid a flash of lightning, before racing toward the ghostly creatures as 5 streaks of radiant, golden light. However, the bodies of the 5 ghostly creatures suddenly took on an insubstantial quality, and the azure bamboo cloud-swarm swords passed straight through them without inflicting any damage. The 5 ghostly creatures were incredibly fast, and they reached Han Li in the blink of an eye before grabbing onto his body and preparing to sink their teeth into his flesh. Han Li's first instinct was to release his spirit domain, but he caught himself as a faint smile appeared on his face, and the golden light that had begun appearing over his body suddenly faded away. The 5 ghostly creatures sank their teeth into his body, sending blood splattering in all directions, while a burst of excruciating agony speared into his soul. However, he remained standing calmly on the spot, as if he couldn't feel any pain at all, and he had even closed his eyes. The eyes of the five ghostly creatures were glowing with excitement as they eagerly tore off chunks of flesh from Han Li's body, and before long, he had been reduced to a bare skeleton, but he remained completely unconcerned. The five ghostly creatures grabbed onto his skeleton, yet right as they were about to wrench it apart, Han Li suddenly declared in a calm manner, "Fear is nothing more than illusion. If I am not me, then what do I have to worry?" A faint glow began to emanate from his body as he spoke, and the five ghostly creatures clinging to his body were instantly reduced to ashes, while the pool of blood down below also vanished. All of a sudden, Han Li was brought back to the black space with his body completely unscathed, as if the ordeal that he had just suffered had been nothing more than a dream. However, before he even had a chance to catch his breath, his surroundings transformed once again. This time, he appeared in a pink world, surrounded by countless stunning women. There were thin and delicate young women who fully exemplified the exuberance and beauty of youth, as well as more mature and voluptuous women who exuded a sense of ripe allure. These women were all scantily dressed as they sang and danced around Han Li in a seductive manner, and any man could easily be forgiven for falling to their collective seduction. Yet Han Li remained completely unmoved, and it was as if he couldn't even see the women around him. Right at this moment, a young woman embraced him from behind as she breathed gently against his ear, and it was none other than Bai Sayuan. "You captured my heart long ago, Senior Han. You also want me, but haven't acted on your desires because that would be unbefitting of someone of your status, right?" Bai Sayuan giggled in a voice that was dripping with allure. Immediately thereafter, Yu Menghan sidled up against Han Li with desire smoldering in her eyes as she confessed, "Senior Han, I worked so hard in my cultivation to ascend to the true immortal realm also that I could find you." Her arrival was followed by that of two more women, namely Yuan Yao and Yan Li. "Brother Han, big sister Yan Li has also had feelings for you for a very long time, so you have to take responsibility for her." Yuan Yao giggled as she pressed herself tightly against his arm. Yan Li was blushing deeply, but she also enveloped Han Li in a warm embrace. All of the surrounding women had transformed into female cultivators that were past acquaintances of his, and they were all putting their most seductive qualities on full display. Relationships and women are nothing more than parting clouds. If I am not me, then why should I be attached? Han Li declared in an expressionless manner, and all of the surrounding women transformed into a series of skeletons before disintegrating into dust, while the pink world reverted back to the black space from before. However, in the next instant, the surrounding scenery transformed once again, and Han Li appeared in a majestic palace, seated within which were the Reincarnation Palace Master, Li Yuanju, Yue Mayan, Bai Zi, and all of his other acquaintances from the spirit realm and the mortal realm. All of them immediately rose to their feet before falling to their knees with looks of awe and veneration in their eyes as they collectively declared, "We pay our respects to the ruler of all realms, the one who stands at the pinnacle of the great Tao." Han Li looked on in an emotionless manner. "Bring them in," a tall and imposing guard yelled, and a series of shackled figures stumbled into the palace from outside. All of them were past enemies of Han Li's, including the likes of Qi Mozi, Shi Pakong, and Yin Chengquan. The procession was led by none other than Gu Huijin, who was looking very disheveled, and his aura was also extremely feeble. All of these people had already lost the flair that they once possessed. It seemed that their shackles possessed some type of restrictive power that completely sealed away their cultivation bases, reducing them to mere mortals. All of a sudden, a hulking mountain of a man appeared behind them, wielding a gleaming cleaver, and with just a few swings of the cleaver, Gu Huijin and the others were all promptly decapitated, with their bloody heads falling to the ground at Han Li's feet. However, once again, he remained completely unmoved. Why do you still not smile, master? Could it be that there are still other enemies that you wish to see dead? Please tell me and I will find them, even if I must scour all of the realms under the heavens. The brawny guard implored as he fell to one knee. Power is nothing more than a pipe dream. If I am not me, then what is there to be enamored with? Han Li declared, and the surrounding illusion dissipated again. Han Li's expression remained unchanged, but there had been a subtle change in his mental state. Having endured 3 consecutive illusions, he had severed 3 types of attachments, and that left him feeling a little weary, but also somehow lighter and more carefree than ever before. Right at this moment, the surrounding scene changed once again, and he found himself standing atop a mountain of lifeless bodies, surrounded by a sea of blood. All of the deceased were dressed in reincarnation palace and primordial land attire, and he was familiar with many of them. The reincarnation palace master, Gan Jiuzhen, Yue Mayan, Bai Zi. All of them lay dead here with looks of horror and indignation on their stiff faces. The entire air was filled with the suffocating stench of blood and decay, and it was all so realistic that it was indiscernible from reality. Han Li. A cold voice rang out from up ahead, and Han Li looked up to discover Gu Huijin standing in the distance. Do you see this? This is what happens to people who try to oppose me, Gu Huijin sneered. With a sweep of his sleeve, several figures appeared before him, all of whom were tightly bound. They were Nangong Wan, Violet Spirit, Jin Tong, Weeping Soul, Liu Lair, Shi Chuankang, and Han Li's parents from the mortal realm. Han Li's expression changed slightly upon seeing this, but he quickly composed himself again. These are all very important people to you, are they not? Submit to me right now and vow to serve me for the rest of eternity, or all of them will be subjected to terrible deaths before your eyes, Gu Huijin declared with a derisive sneer. Han Li remained unmoved. You probably think I'm bluffing, don't you? Gu Huijin sneered as his eyes narrowed slightly, following which he pointed a finger at Shi Chuankang, and a blade of golden light instantly pierced through his chest. His body was split into 2, and the 2 halves fell into a puddle of his blood. Han Li's expression changed slightly once again, but his composure quickly returned. Immediately thereafter, 2 more beams of golden light shot out of Gu Huijin's fingertips, and Jin Tong and Weeping Soul also met their demise. An unnatural flush appeared on Han Li's face, only to instantly fade away. So your friends mean nothing to you. In that case, what about this little girl by the name of Liu Lair? I heard that she's like a sister to you. Are you going to just stand there and watch her die as well? Gu Huijin sneered as he sent a beam of golden light piercing through Liu Lair's body. Han Li threw up a small mouthful of blood as he swayed unsteadily on his feet, but was able to steady himself. All that's left are your 2 Dao partners and your parents. Who should I kill first? How about I give you the power of choice this time? You tell me who you want to have killed first, and you can leave the one who's most precious to you for last, Gu Huijin offered. Han Li's cheeks were brightly flushed, and his breathing had become quite labored. His composed facade had finally been shattered, but he remained silent as he gritted his teeth tightly. How disappointing. If you're not going to make a choice, then I'll do it for you. Killing them one by one is too much of a hassle, so I'll just get rid of all 4 of them at once, Gu Huijin said as his hand began to glow with golden light again. Stop, Han Li suddenly yelled, and Gu Huijin immediately stopped what he was doing as a bright smile appeared on his face. Have you finally come around? Kneel to me now and I can spare their lives, Gu Huijin chortled with glee. Han Li slowly stepped forward with his cheeks a fiery complexion of red, and sweat was pouring down from his forehead as he slowly strode over to Gu Huijin. Kneel, Gu Huijin yelled, and Han Li duly obliged. Gu Huijin erupted into gleeful laughter as he reached out to make a grabbing motion with one another, and 5 streaks of black light appeared above Han Li, before attempting to burrow their way into his body. However, the streaks of black light were unable to pierce into his body at all, and they struck him with a loud clang, as if they had just struck a wall. Right at this moment, Han Li raised his head, and the red coloration of his face had completely faded away, turning his complexion as fair as jade. Gu Huijin's expression changed drastically upon seeing this, yet before he had a chance to do anything, a streak of translucent light appeared before him, before slashing his body into two. "Father, Mother, Wanner, Violet Spirit, sorry to have allowed you to be used by that scoundrel," Han Li said, then swept a sleeve through the air, and the entire crimson space instantly collapsed. Upon returning to the black space, Han Li stumbled slightly as a weary look appeared on his face. He had become rather detached from the world over the course of his cultivation journey, but there were certain people that he still held very close to his heart, making his attachments to them far more difficult to sever. Fate brings friends and family together, but fate also drives them apart. I am not me, you are not you, and they are not them, so what is there to be attached to? As this thought surfaced in his mind, the surrounding scene transformed once again, placing him in a putrid swamp, while he had transformed into a rotten corpse laying in the swamp. His body was overrun with maggots and flies, and sections of his skeleton had been exposed as his decaying flesh gave way in those places. Han Li's brows furrowed slightly at his current predicament, but he immediately closed his eyes to calm himself. Moments later, his eyes sprang open again as he murmured to himself, "One's body is nothing more than a bunch of individual parts assembled by the threads of fate. It bears no true significance or cause for attachment." The surrounding scene crumbled once again, returning him to the black space, but before he had a chance to rest, a new illusion appeared. The illusions came one after another, with every single one presenting a stern trial. Thanks to his immense willpower and the insights that he had recently gleaned, he was able to sever one attachment after another, and even though his mental fortitude was being bolstered with each trial that he overcame, he had also become exhausted to the extreme, to the point that his vision was beginning to blur around the edges. After vanquishing one more illusion, Han Li found himself back in the black space, and at this point, he was so exhausted that he was on the verge of falling unconscious. Right at this moment, the self-corp soul's voice suddenly rang out. There are countless attachments that one develops over the course of a lifetime. Your attachments arise from your heart, so as long as your heart is not at peace, there will be no end to the attachments that you must sever. In your current state, there's no way you can overcome this hurdle. Han Li swayed unsteadily upon hearing this, and a dazed look appeared in his eyes. Just give up. Why continue to toil and suffer? Sometimes giving up is the wise choice. Taoist Huyen gave up his path of cultivation to live in seclusion, and he's now able to enjoy life to the fullest, so why don't you do the same? The self-corp soul's voice had become very gentle and alluring, and Han Li's eyes began to gradually drift out of focus. His consciousness slowly began to fade away, and he was on the verge of falling into a deep sleep. Right at this moment, it was as if a bolt of lightning had flashed through his mind, and his exhaustion was suppressed by what little remained of his willpower. You certainly chose the right time to make a move, striking when I'm at my most exhausted and vulnerable. If my mental fortitude had been even slightly lacking, then I would have fallen at the final hurdle. Han Li harumphed coldly as he swept a sleeve through the air, and the self-corp soul's voice abruptly trailed off, while the surrounding black space collapsed violently. All of a sudden, Han Li found himself back in the flower branch domain. Finally, he sighed in a relieved manner. Right at this moment, a burst of vast yet gentle power surged into his soul, wiping away all of his exhaustion. His body and soul were basked in a sense of blissful comfort, as if he were being rewarded for reaching the final destination of his cultivation journey. It was a truly indescribable sense of achievement and joy. And as more and more power continued to surge into his body, it seemed as if there would be no end to the degree with which his own powers were going to be elevated. His body became as light as a feather, and he drifted up into the heavens, quickly reaching extremely lofty heights. In this instant, it was as if the entire true immortal realm were beneath his feet, as were the devil realm, the gray realm, and the underworld. He felt as if he had transcended everything to become an omnipotent being, and as he continued to ascend, it was as if he were about to rise up into another world. All of a sudden, a sense of danger tore through this blissful sensation, and Han Li hurriedly suppressed this feeling of ascension, upon which he reappeared in the flower branch domain. This time, it was the true flower branch domain. So the final test concerns one's attachment to power. That was a really close call. It makes sense that this is the final test, considering power is the lifelong pursuit of all cultivators, and one could easily lose their way in this final test. Having overcome the final hurdle, Han Li's mental state had been perfected, and with a sweep of his sleeve, an orb of azure light flew out of his body before vanishing into the nearby earthly deity avatar. The space above the flower branch domain instantly turned golden in color as the gates of the heavenly Tao appeared once more. Boundless golden light surged out of the gate, imbued with the secrets of the laws of time, and all of it was injected into his body. The world's origin chi, within a radius of hundreds of thousands of kilometers, was stirred up into a frenzy, before converging in all directions to be injected into Han Li's body, along with the golden light flowing out of the heavenly gates. The final 1,800th immortal acupoint on his body instantly lit up, and blinding, golden light began radiating from his entire body, forming an incredibly bright golden halo. Bursts of tremendous aura fluctuations surged out of the golden light, and they were only becoming more and more formidable. These aura fluctuations were also accompanied by immense waves of spiritual sense fluctuations that erupted in all directions. With this latest breakthrough, he had finally reached full mastery of the 7th level of the spirit refinement technique as well. Elsewhere in the flower branch domain, Jin Tong abruptly snapped out of her cultivation before vanishing from the spot. In the next instant, he appeared in the deepest part of the domain with Nangong Wan in tow, right as a pillar of white light erupted out of Han Li's bamboo pavilion. Bursts of tremendous spiritual sense fluctuations surged out of the pillar of light, and in response, Jin Tong's glabella lit up with golden radiance as she conjured up a translucent golden light barrier that encompassed both of them. The light barrier rippled unsteadily in the face of the immense spiritual sense fluctuations surging through the air, and an ecstatic look appeared on Nangong Wan's face as she asked, "Has he managed to make a breakthrough?" He has. It looks like not only has he made a breakthrough in his cultivation base, his spirit refinement technique has also been perfected. Jin Tong replied in a stunned manner as she did everything in her power to fortify the golden light barrier. Outside the flower branch domain, a vast expanse of radiant, golden light had appeared in the sky, and a pillar of even brighter white light erupted out of it into the heavens. Inside the Reincarnation Palace branch in the underworld, a pillar of white light suddenly appeared in front of the Six Paths Reincarnation plate without any warning before injecting itself into the plate. The Six Paths Reincarnation plate immediately began trembling violently as bursts of light, containing countless images, surged out of it before vanishing into the pillar of white light. Gan Jiuzhen appeared before the Six Paths Reincarnation plate with an alarmed look on her face, and not long after her arrival, the pillar of white light faded away, and it was as if nothing had happened. According to Father, a similar phenomenon took place back when he perfected the spirit refinement technique. Who is it this time? Could it be Han Li? With that in mind, Gan Jiuzhen immediately departed with an excited gleam in her eyes, planning to report this matter to the Reincarnation Palace Master. Ali. Inside the flower branch domain, maintaining the golden light barrier had become quite a strenuous task for Jin Tong. Her soul was relatively weak to begin with, and the spiritual sense fluctuations surging out of the bamboo pavilion were only becoming more and more powerful. Right at this moment, the pillar of white light in the distance suddenly flashed a few times before fading away, much to Jin Tong's relief. Even though the pillar of white light had disappeared, the golden heavenly gate in the sky still remained, and golden light continued to surge out of it without pause. An astonished look flashed through Jin Tong's eyes as she sensed the tremendous law powers of the heavenly Tao within the golden light. She had also been granted the power of the heavenly Tao back when her Tao ancestor status was restored, but nowhere near as much as what Han Li was receiving now. Only after a long while did the golden light above the flower branch domain fade away, while Han Li slowly opened his eyes to reveal a pair of completely emotionless pupils that looked as if they were manifestations of the heavenly Tao. An unrivaled aura erupted out of his body, instantly reducing everything in the immediate vicinity to nothingness. An alarmed look appeared on the earthly deity avatar's face as it hurriedly conjured up a spherical golden light barrier around itself, only to have close to half of the light barrier instantly destroyed by the almighty aura surging out of Han Li's body. The entire bamboo pavilion was erased from existence in an instant, but his tremendous aura continued to proliferate outward in all directions, destroying everything in its path. Cracks began to appear over the entire flower branch domain, and it was quickly brought to the verge of collapse. "Fellow Taoist Han," Jin Tong exclaimed in an alarmed manner while injecting her power into the flower branch domain to stabilize it. Han Li shuddered as a hint of lucidity appeared in his eyes, and he immediately suppressed his own aura. Jin Tong heaved a long sigh of relief upon seeing this, while the golden light barrier around the earthly deity avatar faded away. "I didn't think you would be able to sever all of your attachments so quickly. You have bested me," the earthly deity avatar sighed. "Just as you said, attachments arise from the heart, so there will be no end to them if one's heart is not at peace. I am not me, so those attachments are not my own. If my attachments do not exist, then I am naturally able to see all things for what they really are," Han Li said in a calm manner. In contrast with his kind corpse soul and wicked corpse soul, even though he had managed to sever his self-corpse soul, he was still unable to see through it. "What do you plan to do with me?" the earthly deity avatar asked. "You pose more of a threat to me than my kind corpse soul and my wicked corpse soul, so I'm afraid I cannot allow you to remain by my side," Han Li replied. "My paltry powers hardly pose any threat to you in your current state," the earthly deity avatar said with a wry smile. Han Li paid no heed to its self-deprecation as he swept a sleeve through the air, and the heaven-controlling vial appeared in his grasp. A burst of dark green light then shot out of the vial at his behest, and the space up ahead was instantly parted to form a translucent wall. Han Li cast an incantation seal into the translucent wall, and a vortex that led to an unknown destination appeared over its surface. "You plan to cast me into an alternate space and time. That suits me just fine," the earthly deity avatar said. Han Li swept a sleeve through the air, releasing a burst of golden light that enveloped the earthly deity avatar before carrying it toward the vortex, and the earthly deity avatar posed no resistance as it allowed itself to be cast into the vortex. With another sweep of his sleeve, the translucent wall vanished, while the heaven-controlling vial fell back into his grasp. Nangong Wan and Jin Tong flew over to him, and he smiled as he said, "Sorry to have made you worry." "It's fine, I'm just glad everything went smoothly for you, Nangong Wan replied with a shake of her head. What do we do from here, fellow Taoist Han? Jin Tong asked. Han Li offered no response as he cast his gaze up toward the heavens. Heavenly Prayer Continent, Heavenmen's Sect. The rising dragon peak was enshrouded in a dense blanket of clouds, and there was a swirling vortex of black mist on the black stone altar on the mountain summit. Inside the vortex was an elderly head that was suspended in midair with nothing to support it. The hair in front of its forehead had already been lost, while the hair on the back was looking very disheveled. All of a sudden, the head's eyelids fluttered slightly before peeling back to reveal a pair of eyes, one black and one white, the latter of which was clearly blind. The head looked up with its remaining functioning eye with great difficulty, right as a swirling, corkscrew-shaped cloud vortex descended from the heavens to land at the foot of the nearby peach tree. The vortex then dissipated to reveal the same white-robed, middle-aged man as last time, seated on a wheelchair that looked as if it had been crafted from white jade. You already asked me to conduct divination for you last time. Why have you come again? The elderly head asked in a hoarse voice. The wheelchair-bound man was none other than Gu Huijin. I'm feeling a little uneasy with the Bodhi banquet coming up so soon, so I must ask you to perform another divination for me, Gu Huijin said. One more divination is all that separates me from full assimilation with the heavenly Tao, and at that point, the promise that you made to me will no longer have any meaning to me, Chen Tuan said. This is something that concerns more than just you and me. If I succeed, I will have essentially elevated the heavenly Tao so that it will no longer have any power over those of us who stand on the mountain summit. Are you not worried that all of our prior efforts would be for naught if you refuse to conduct this divination? Gu Huijin asked in a calm manner. A conflicted look appeared on Chen Tuan's face upon hearing this, and after a brief hesitation he said, "This divination concerns too many Tao ancestors and involves too much of the heavenly Tao. It already goes beyond the realm of a heavenly divination, so I can only conduct half a divination. As for what outcome we get, that will be up to the heavens." "That's fine," Gu Huijin replied with a nod. Chen Tuan didn't waste any more time with words, as he began chanting an incantation. Due to his inability to make hand seals, the process took around twice as long as last time, but finally, a beam of translucent light shot out of his remaining functioning eye before vanishing into the space up ahead. Ali. A long while later, the beam of translucent light faded away, and the vortex behind Chen Tuan suddenly began churning violently as the translucent, black threads extending out of it crawled onto his face before devouring half of his head. With that, all that remained of him was the half of his face that contained his blind eye. "How did it go?" Gu Huijin asked. "From what I could see, everything remains largely the same, but an anomaly has arisen," Chen Tuan replied. "What is the anomaly?" Gu Huijin asked as his eyes narrowed slightly. Instead of answering the question, Chen Tuan conjured up a faint breeze, which blew past the back of his head before circling around the ancient peach tree, picking up hundreds of pink flower petals in the process. The flower petals fell onto the ground to form a tall figure with faint time law powers emanating from within. Gu Huijin rolled his way over to the figure on his wheelchair, then inspected it momentarily before concluding, "It's Han Li." The reincarnation palace master's fate has also been accounted for, so this man remains the only anomaly, Chen Tuan said. "Now that he's been exposed by your divination, he is no longer an anomaly. I'll personally get rid of him. In doing so, I'll be killing two birds with one stone, as he's also the one who currently poses the most potent threat to my position," Gu Huijin said. Even though Han Li had reached the pinnacle of the cultivation of time law powers, in his eyes, Han Li's understanding of the heavenly Tao couldn't even begin to compare with his own, so their battle was going to be completely one-sided. Good, in that case, there should be no further problems down the line, Chen Tuan said. With a casual sweep of his sleeve, Gu Huijin scattered the figure formed by the peach flower petals, and a vortex of cloud and mist began to take shape beneath him. All of a sudden, his expression changed slightly as a faint smile appeared on his face. An esteemed guest has come to visit the heavenly court, so I'll have to go back. Looks like the task of eradicating the anomaly will have to be assigned to someone else, Gu Huijin said. It would be best for you to attend to the anomaly in person, Chen Tuan urged. Will a ubiquitous myriad immortal formation be enough to do the job in my stead? After leaving that rhetorical question hanging in the air, Gu Huijin rose up into the air atop the vortex of cloud and mist before vanishing out of sight. Chen Tuan heaved a forlorn sigh before habitually closing his blind eye. The ancient peach tree rustled slightly, and a flurry of flowers came raining down from its branches. The Middle-earth Immortal region, Eastern Victory Continent. There were countless green islands dotted over a boundless sea, and no more than several hundred kilometers away was the easternmost coastline of the Eastern Victory Continent. In contrast with the jagged, coral-ridden coastline of the Northern Complete Continent, the coastline of the Eastern Victory Continent primarily consisted of sandy beaches, presenting softer and milder lines, like the curvature of a woman's back. The two islands that were closest to the coastline were also the largest of all of the islands. On each island stood a white stone pillar that was hundreds of thousands of feet tall with dense clusters of divine clouds engraved upon them. Through the clouds above, one could make out a three-story archway, hanging above which was a huge red plaque that read Heaven Answer Gate in large golden characters. This was the eastern heavenly gate of the Middle-earth Immortal region, and at this moment, there were close to 1 million armor-clad heavenly soldiers stationed here. Situated at intervals of several dozen kilometers behind these heavenly soldiers were giant immortal generals that stood at over 1 million feet in height, wielding enormous axes that looked as if they could cleave the very heavens into two. Situated several thousand kilometers away was another army of hundreds of thousands of armor-clad figures, but this army was clearly far less organized and uniform than that of the heavenly court. Additionally, there were many living beings of all shapes and forms standing on the surface of the sea in the distance, bobbing up and down with the waves, and a series of massive shadows could be seen slowly swimming through the depths. Behind the army of armor-clad soldiers was a fleet of spirit boats of different descriptions floating on the surface of the sea. The complex runes engraved onto the boats were all glowing radiantly as they drew upon the world's origin chi in the surrounding environment. These spirit boats had been arranged into a line, at the center of which was a massive, dark red ship. A huge, three-story palace had been constructed on the ship, and the plaza in front of the palace was packed with people, led by none other than the Reincarnation Palace Master. Palace Master. All of the people gathered behind the Reincarnation Palace Master fell to one knee while cupping their fists in a parting salute, and the Reincarnation Palace Master instructed in a calm manner, "Proceed according to the plan." After that, he rose up into the air as a streak of light, hurtling directly toward the eastern heavenly gate. The heavenly court army stationed outside the eastern heavenly gate immediately bristled as they prepared for battle, but the Reincarnation Palace Master seemed to have no intentions of starting a conflict as he drew to a halt outside the heavenly gate, leaving the heavenly court's forces at a loss for what to do or what his intentions were. "Didn't Gu Huijin invite me to the Bodhi banquet? I'm here now, but it seems like I'm being met with a rather frosty reception," the Reincarnation Palace Master said with a calm smile. His voice wasn't very loud, but it carried an indescribable, penetrative quality that made all of the heavenly court soldiers and generals feel as if a gong had been struck deep within their consciousness, causing their souls to tremble and waver. Thankfully for them, the Reincarnation Palace Master wasn't trying to harm them with his voice. Instead, he was only making sure that his voice reached the ears of his intended targets. In the central region of the Eastern Victory continent was an undulating mountain range, and there was an unremarkable-looking, white Taoist temple nestled in the mountain range within a lush forest. Inside a three-story pavilion in the Taoist temple was a white-robed, middle-aged man who was reading a book with keen interest. The man was quite thin with a pair of bright and clear eyes, coupled with a pronounced nose and a pair of thin lips. As he read through the book, he couldn't help but habitually stroke his long beard as he murmured to himself, "I wasn't expecting such a twist, but it's a pity that mortals always imagine cultivation to be something so easy. There would always be a powerful cultivation art waiting at the bottom of a cliff, or an unmatched weapon resting deep within a mountain. It makes for a good story, but it's simply too good to be true." He set down the book and closed it as he spoke, revealing it not to be some cultivation art or secret technique. Instead, it was merely a novel by the name of Record of a Mortal's Journey to Immortality, written by a mortal who knew nothing about cultivation with the pen name of Wang Yu. Right at this moment, the man suddenly raised an eyebrow as he murmured to himself, "He's here." The thin Taoist priest took a step forward as he spoke, and in the blink of an eye, he appeared outside the eastern heavenly gate. All of the heavenly court's forces were instilled with a sense of great confidence at the sight of the Taoist priest, and they greeted collectively, in a thunderous voice that shook the heavens, "Welcome, Patriarch Qing Qiu." That unremarkable Taoist temple was the Heaven Guard Pavilion of the Eastern Victory continent, while the thin Taoist priest was the Tao ancestor that had been stationed here. "Sorry for not arranging a more elaborate welcome for an esteemed guest like yourself," Taoist Master Qing Qiu said as he cupped his in a salute, rather than extending a Taoist salute. "There's no need for that. It's not like I'm welcome here anyway," the Reincarnation Palace Master said with a smile. "We had predicted that you would attack the Southern Heavenly Gate or the Western Heavenly Gate, so you've really caught me off guard here," Taoist Master Qing Qiu admitted with an awkward smile. "That was a reasonable prediction to make. If I were planning to force my way to the Heavenly Court, then those two heavenly gates would indeed be better options to attack. However, seeing as I'm here as a guest, it's best for me to go through your Eastern Heavenly Gate," the Reincarnation Palace Master explained. "Thankfully, I did make some preparations in advance. A carriage has already been prepared. Would you like to come with me?" Taoist Master Qing Qiu offered with a smile. "Please lead the way, fellow Taoist Qing Qiu," the Reincarnation Palace Master replied. Taoist Master Qing Qiu was just about to turn and lead the way when he suddenly faltered slightly before asking, "You're not bringing your entourage with you?" "There's no need for that. I am the Heavenly Court's sole target, so I won't endanger any members of my entourage," the Reincarnation Palace Master replied with a nonchalant smile. "You're truly a very remarkable man, Palace Master. If it weren't for the fact that we were on opposing sides, I would have invited you for a drink and a chat," Taoist Master Qing Qiu said with a smile. "You're very welcome to visit my Reincarnation Palace for a drink anytime," the Reincarnation Palace Master replied. "If a permanent truce can be established between your Reincarnation Palace and our Heavenly Court during this Badhai banquet, then I'll be sure to pay your Reincarnation Palace a visit," Taoist Master Qing Qiu promised with a smile. The Reincarnation Palace Master offered no response to this. The two of them arrived before the majestic Heaven Answer Gate, and with a sweep of Taoist Master Qing Qiu's sleeve, the powerful restrictions set up within the gate were withdrawn. After the two of them entered the gate, the restrictions were reactivated. Not far away ahead of them was a massive carriage that resembled a pavilion. It was extremely intricately and opulently crafted, and it was drawn by 8 dragon horses with golden scales all over their bodies. The eyes of the dragon horses were gleaming brightly, and there were clouds of crimson flames beneath their hooves, presenting a spectacular sight to behold. "This is already quite a grand welcome," the Reincarnation Palace Master remarked. "Indeed it is. I would never have been able to enjoy this treatment had I not been accompanying you, so I have you to thank for this experience," Taoist Master Ching Qiu chuckled. Only after the two of them entered the carriage did the Reincarnation Palace Master discover that its internal space was far more massive than it appeared from the outside. The 8 dragon horses broke into a gallop toward the heavenly palace continent at Taoist Master Ching Qiu's behest, leaving long trails of crimson flames behind them as they quickly vanished out of sight. Inside the carriage, a perplexed look appeared on Taoist Master Ching Qiu's face as he asked, "Please pardon my curiosity, but are you here for a battle or not? You've assembled a mighty army in front of my eastern heavenly gate, yet you're attending the Bodhi banquet on your own. Why don't you take a guess, fellow Taoist Ching Qiu?" The Reincarnation Palace Master replied in an ambiguous manner. "This conversation won't go very far if all your answers are going to be like this," Taoist Master Ching Qiu sighed. "Where is the Bodhi banquet being held this time, fellow Taoist Ching Qiu?" the Reincarnation Palace Master asked. Taoist Master Ching Qiu hesitated momentarily, then replied, "As usual, the main venue will be on the Heavenly Palace continent, but there are too many people in attendance this time, so several sub-venues have been added on the other continents. There is one on my Eastern Victory continent as well, so I'll have to return there to oversee proceedings after I've accompanied you to the Heavenly Palace continent." "I see, so the entire Middle Earth Immortal region is serving as the venue for the Bodhi banquet." Ali. Several days later, Dragon Abyss Immortal region, Azure Abyss continent. Above a vast section of the sea was a blanket of low-hanging dark clouds that looked as if it were on the verge of meeting the surface of the sea. Howling whirlwinds were sweeping through the area incessantly, raising enormous waves. A streak of golden light that contained a large spirit boat was racing through the air, giving off bursts of immense immortal spiritual power fluctuations. Standing at the front of the spirit boat was none other than Han Li. Following the severance of one's third corpse soul, the next step was to integrate oneself into the heavenly Tao to reach the status of Tao ancestor. However, standing at the end of Han Li's path was Gu Huijin, so there was no way through to the Tao ancestor throne for him. Hence, he was currently in a rather awkward situation. He could sense his own connection with the river of time becoming stronger and stronger, yet he was still unable to feel any affinity with the heavenly Tao. Standing behind him on the boat were Nangong Wan and Jin Tong, and the former asked in a puzzled manner, "Why has he still voluntarily traveled to the heavenly court even after I've already been rescued?" Han Li knew that she was referring to the Reincarnation Palace Master, and he replied, "All Gan Jiazhen told me was that he had traveled to the heavenly court, but hadn't revealed his reasons for doing so. I'm assuming he instructed her not to disclose his reasons to me." "You're saying he's intentionally keeping you oblivious to his plans?" Nangong Wan asked, feeling even more befuddled than before. "I'm just guessing as well. The Reincarnation Palace and the Heavenly Court have been clashing for countless years, and both sides are riddled with moles from the opposition, so perhaps it's better if I act independently of the Reincarnation Palace." Nangong Wan had a rough idea of what Han Li was alluding to, and she nodded in response. "There's no need for you to come with me, Jin Tong. With Xuanyu and Jai dead, your vengeance has been exacted. There's no telling what's going to happen on this trip, so there's no need for you to get involved," Han Li said. Xuanyuanjai killed my former incarnation under orders from the heavenly court, so his death alone can only count as a partial exaction of vengeance, Jin Tong replied in an expressionless manner. In reality, she was accompanying Han Li on this trip more so to repay him than for personal vengeance. Now that she had returned to her Dao ancestor status, not only did Han Li not have to be concerned for her safety, she was also going to serve as a powerful ally of his, so he didn't try to dissuade her any further. In the blink of an eye, the spirit boat had already covered a distance of hundreds of thousands of kilometers, and they emerged from the stormy sea to be greeted by the sight of clear, blue skies. Han Li cast his gaze into the distance, and an alarmed look suddenly appeared on his face as he caught sight of a pair of seabirds swooping down from above. He immediately positioned himself in front of Nangong Wan as he yelled, "Look out!" As soon as his voice trailed off, an enormous pillar of silver light suddenly descended from the heavens without any warning, crashing down onto the surface of the sea to send enormous waves erupting in all directions. Immediately thereafter, 4 figures shot out of the pillar of silver light before positioning themselves in the south, north, east, and west to surround Han Li's trio. The one situated to the east was a tall woman in purple with a set of extremely beautiful facial features, but there was a cold and unapproachable look on her face, and she was holding a palm-sized, round, silver mirror with a black rune glowing on its surface. Situated across from her to the west was a brawny man with a thick beard, clad in a suit of black leather armor. There was a pair of tusks protruding out of his mouth, indicating that he was not human, and he was holding an identical silver mirror to the woman in purple. The 2 figures situated in the south and the north were a hunchbacked elderly woman and a white-haired man with a childlike appearance, respectively. The elderly woman had a set of hideous features, and her face was riddled with deep wrinkles, while a large, black blotch was present on both her forehead and under her chin. As for the white-haired man, despite his youthful appearance, he had eyes that resembled a pair of bottomless abysses that were filled with boundless darkness, and each of them was also holding a silver mirror. What was most astonishing of all was that their auras indicated that all 4 of them were Dao ancestors. "Get back in the flower branch domain for now," Han Li said as he swept a sleeve through the air to conjure up a door of silver light. "Be careful," Nangong Wan cautioned with a concerned expression, then stepped into the domain. In contrast, Jin Tong wasn't concerned at all as she swept a cold gaze over the 4 figures, then mused, "It's not every day that you get to see 4 Dao ancestors in one place. Do you think they're here for you or me? Now's not the time to be joking around. There's something strange about those mirrors, so we have to get out of here as soon as possible," Han Li said in a serious manner. "In that case, I'll just have to break their mirrors." As soon as Jin Tong's voice trailed off, she vanished from the spot without any warning, only to instantly reappear behind the brawny man amid an eruption of radiant, golden light. Immediately thereafter, she reached out with both hands to conjure up a golden vortex that gave off bursts of devouring force. The brawny man seemed to have anticipated this, and he took a step back to distance himself from Jin Tong while simultaneously making a string of hand seals and chanting an incantation. His 3 companions also sprang into action, and they were moving in perfect synchronicity. A sense of foreboding welled up in Han Li's heart upon seeing this, and he hurriedly called out to Jin Tong while releasing his time spirit domain. However, only half of his spirit domain had unfurled when a gargantuan, silver formation emerged over the seabed below, encompassing an area with a radius of hundreds of thousands of kilometers. A burst of peculiar spatial fluctuations instantly rose up from the seabed to encompass the entire surrounding area. An alarmed look appeared on Han Li's face upon seeing this, and he hurriedly grabbed onto Jin Tong, who had just flown back to his side. then conjured up a golden lightning teleportation formation. The two of them vanished from the spot with a loud thunderclap, only to reappear no more than 10,000 feet away, still situated above the formation on the seabed. "The surrounding space has been sealed," Han Li said with slightly furrowed brows. "We'll just have to break the seal then," Jin Tong replied with a nonchalant grin. All of a sudden, a burst of blinding, silver light appeared from each of the four directions, and a thick pillar of silver light erupted out of the surface of the silver mirrors held by the four Tao ancestors, before racing toward the pillar of silver light that had descended from the heavens. As the four beams of silver light entered the pillar of silver light, countless silver projections were conjured up, as if there were thousands of mirrors reflecting one another, forming a series of irregular light barriers that layered themselves on top of one another to encompass the entire sky. In the next instant, the silver light barrier began to resonate with the seabed formation, and the entire area encompassed within the formation was instantly basked in dazzling, silver light. Before Han Li and Jin Tong had a chance to do anything, their surroundings began to transform. The bright, blue sky instantly turned into a dark night sky, while the surrounding space was peeled away layer by layer to reveal the suffocating darkness underneath. The entire area had been plunged into boundless darkness, with no sources of light aside from what was emanating from Han Li and Jin Tong's bodies. "Is this an illusion?" Jin Tong asked in a perplexed manner. "It's not an illusion. It's an extremely advanced spatial secret technique. Right now, we are no longer in the Dragon Abyss Immortal region," Han Li replied as he inspected his surroundings with his infernal devilish eyes. Only now did he come to understand why he had failed to detect that formation with his spiritual sense earlier. As it turned out, the formation was never in the Dragon Abyss Immortal region to begin with. Instead, it had been summoned there by the four Tao ancestors before being activated by their collective power. "It seems like our auras are the only ones present here. They did all of this just to throw us in here. There's no world's origin chi in this place. But that doesn't really have much of an impact on us anyway," Jin Tong mused in a puzzled manner. "If you expand your spiritual sense a little further, you'll discover that this is a cage. If I'm not mistaken, they intend to imprison us here," Han Li said. Jin Tong did as he suggested, and sure enough, she quickly made the same discovery. A massive spatial fortress formed by some type of extremely peculiar spatial power had taken shape around them, trapping them in the center. "Could it be that they've imprisoned us here to prevent us from getting to the heavenly court?" Jin Tong asked. "I presume so. Honestly, I'm a little flattered that the heavenly court holds me in such high regard that they sent four Tao ancestors to imprison a great encompassment cultivator like me, especially on the cusp of the Badhai banquet," Han Li remarked with a smile. "You've already severed all three corpse souls and defeated two of the heavenly court's Tao ancestors, one of whom was Xunyuan Jai, one of the seven heavenly Tao lords. Is it really that much of a surprise that they see you as such a major threat?" Jin Tong chuckled. Han Li heaved an internal sigh upon hearing this. Indeed, given his current powers, it really wouldn't have been surprising even if Gu Huijin had come after him in person. "They must be delusional if they think this place can trap us," Jin Tong said as she rubbed her hands together, and it was clear that she was raring to go. "Let's try and find a way out," Han Li said, and Jin Tong nodded in response before racing away as a streak of golden light. Several seconds later, an eruption of bright, golden light appeared in the darkness millions of kilometers, as a gargantuan golden beetle crashed into something with a deafening boom. Immediately thereafter, a vast spatial barrier appeared in that direction, and a series of silver ripples ran over its surface, spreading into infinity and beyond. With her first attack proving ineffective, Jin Tong immediately made a second attempt. this time conjuring up a sharp, corkscrew-shaped pillar of light in front of herself, before crashing into the spatial barrier again. Another earth-shattering boom rang out as Jin Tong was sent flying back through the air, while the spatial barrier remained completely unscathed. Right as she was about to make a third attempt, Han Li intervened. There's something strange about this space. The spatial barrier seems to be connected to some type of vast power, so it's going to be very difficult to break our way out using brute force. Let's take a look to see if there are any weak points that can be exploited. Jin Tong reverted back to her human form upon hearing this, and after a brief discussion, they parted ways, moving in different directions to examine the spatial barrier. Ali. Outside the vast spatial barrier was a dark space similar to the extra heaven sphere, and at this moment, the four Tao ancestors were hovering outside the spatial barrier, scrutinizing Han Li and Jin Tong intently. From within the spatial barrier, one could see nothing but a boundless expanse of darkness, but strangely enough, looking in from the outside, it was as clear as day. Do you think they'll be able to break this ubiquitous myriad immortal formation, Zai Shan? The brawny man asked. Even if the four of us were trapped in there, we may not be able to break our way out, so I would think the formation will be able to trap them for at least 10,000 years, the tall woman in purple replied. Why do you ask that, Dong Lihu? Are you not confident in the formation? The hideous elderly woman asked. I must admit that I'm a little apprehensive, fellow Taoist Zhu Yan. One of them is the devouring Tao ancestor, while the other has cultivated the laws of time to the pinnacle of the great encompassment stage and poses a potent threat even to the seven heavenly Tao lords, so surely there's some cause for concern, Dong Lihu replied. The ubiquitous path myriad immortal formation combines the power of 10 immortal regions, with dozens of great encompassment cultivators, hundreds of high zenith cultivators, and thousands of golden immortals stationed in each immortal region. If they manage to break out of this formation, I, for one, would be too ashamed to even return to the heavenly court. The elderly woman by the name of Zhu Yan harumphed coldly. She cast her gaze into the distance as she spoke, and there were 10 massive gates hovering in the darkness, each of which was connected to a different immortal region. A different piece of scenery was visible through each gate, including a mountain summit, an island on the sea, and a vast, primordial forest. Enormous formations had been erected in all of these locations, and at the center of each formation was a massive stone pillar that stood at close to 100,000 feet tall, with all manners of runes engraved upon them. The great encompassment, high zenith, and golden immortal cultivators that Zhu Yan had mentioned were all seated around the stone pillars, focused intently on manning the formations. Rings of silver light were constantly rising up from the ground beneath them, before rising up into the air and fusing into the stone pillars at the center of the formations. The world's origin chi in these 10 immortal regions was being devoured by the formations at an alarming rate, and as a result, there were many places that weren't abundant with the world's origin chi to begin with, in which forests were withering away and rivers were drying up. The ubiquitous myriad immortal formation was unmatched in terms of the number of powerful cultivators and the sheer amount of the world's origin chi required to support it. And Han Li and Jin Tong could have never imagined that they were contending against the collective might of 10 immortal regions and over 10,000 immortals, not to mention the 4 Tao ancestors at the helm. Right at this moment, the white-haired man with the childlike features suddenly said, "By the way, fellow Taoist Zhu Yan, if I recall correctly, the orders we received from the heavenly court were to trap these two in the formation and kill them, right?" You make that sound so easy, fellow Taoist Meng Yuan. Did you not hear about Xuanyuan Jai's demise? He was one of the 5 elemental essential Tao ancestors, so his powers were most definitely beyond ours, Zhu Yan said. I have heard about this, but according to my sources, that was a very unconvincing victory. Not only did he have that gold-devouring immortal's help, Xuanyuan Jai's complacency also played a large part in his defeat, Yuan Meng countered. In that case, have you heard that Feng Qingshui also almost met his demise by Han Li's hands? That time, he didn't have the gold-devouring immortal to help him, Zhu Yan sneered. Fellow Taoist Zhu Yan is right. It's clear from their aura fluctuations that they're not going to be easy to deal with. On top of that, all of us are Tao ancestors bound by the restrictions of the heavenly Tao, so it's simply not worth it for us to go all out in a battle here, Dong Lihu said. Gu Huijin personally issued this order, so we can't just blatantly ignore it, Meng Yuan said in a hesitant manner. If you insist on doing something, then why don't you go in and engage them in battle first? We'll be sure to assist you using the power of the formation, Zhu Yan suggested with a smile. Meng Yuan's eyes narrowed slightly in fury upon hearing this. That's enough. All we have to do is ensure that they can't travel to the heavenly court. There's no need for us to go above and beyond. Once the Badhai banquet is over, Gu Huijin can deal with them himself, Zai Shan interjected in an authoritative manner. It was clear that she was the leader of the group, and her verdict was final. Meng Yuan heaved an internal sigh of relief upon hearing this. Of course, he didn't actually want to go up against Han Li. He had only protested against the others so he would appear in a better light. After all, it was the others who had refused to fight, while he had been eager to follow Gu Huijin's orders, on the surface at least. How unfortunate that we're stuck here while the Badhai banquet is being held. Looks like we won't get to taste the Badhai Dao fruit, Zhu Yan sighed in a disappointed manner. This was a sobering thought for her companions as well, and it only served to further fuel their resentment toward Han Li and Jin Tong. Li. Middle-earth Immortal Region. A mighty fleet of giant spirit boats had been assembled on the sea outside the southern Gaze continent's Heaven Answer Gate, and all of them were carrying large flags with the words Reincarnation Palace emblazoned upon them. There were countless people on the spirit boats and hovering in the air above the sea, most of whom were wearing Reincarnation Palace attire complete with Reincarnation Palace masks of different colors. There was a row of 7 or 8 figures standing side by side on the spirit boat at the forefront of the fleet, 6 of whom were wearing black masks, while the remaining 2 stood with their faces uncovered. One of the 2 was a muscular young man with a head of short, silver hair. There was a black cloth over his face that concealed only his mouth and nose, and his exposed eyes were flashing with fierce killing intent. There were also 2 green sabers strapped to his back, neither of which had a scabbard. The sabers were a crystalline green color, and there was faint, green mist constantly emanating from within, as if they were breathing like a pair of living beings. Standing beside him was none other than Wu Yang, whose brows were tightly furrowed as he asked, "Tan Lang, the palace master has already entered the heavenly court, right?" "He's already gone through the eastern heavenly gate, and the Badhai banquet is set to commence in a few hours," the silver-haired young man replied. "How are things going on Yanzhuo and Xuanyu's end?" Wu Yang asked, and it was clear that he was feeling a little uneasy. "Lighten up a bit, they're the ones who should be nervous," Tan Lang said as he pointed a finger at the vast Heaven Answer Gate in the distance. Wu Yang cast his gaze toward the direction that he was pointing in to discover a series of giant pillars of light of different colors rising up from the ground behind the Heaven Answer Gate, giving off bursts of formidable spatial fluctuations. That was where the major teleportation formations connecting the southern Gaze continent to other immortal regions were situated, and at the moment, there were many powerful figures from all over the true immortal realm arriving through the formations, with no lack of Tao ancestors and great encompassment cultivators among them. "My cold jade sabers are thirsting for their blood," Tan Lang cackled. Beneath the black cloth over his face was a horrific scar that ran from the bottom of his ear to his mouth. Ali. In addition to the eastern and southern heavenly gates, a mighty reincarnation palace army had been assembled outside the western heavenly gate as well, and it had already been locked in a confrontation against the heavenly court's forces for quite some time. Both sides had made some provocative gestures, but no battle had broken out thus far. Meanwhile, the northern heavenly gate was welcoming the most guests out of the 4 heavenly gates, with cultivators from all immortal regions constantly streaming in through the various teleportation formations. All 9 continents in the Middle Earth immortal region were joyously celebrating the imminent commencement of the Badhai banquet, and even though some of the sects in the Middle Earth immortal region didn't have the privilege of attending the Badhai banquet, they were also taking advantage of this opportunity to hold celebratory events of their own. All of the major trading houses were also making full use of this opportunity to hold all types of auctions and exchange events, attracting countless eager cultivators. However, compared with the main event that was the Badhai banquet, these events were made to appear all too insignificant. At the moment, all of the most powerful and prestigious figures across the entire true immortal realm were gathered in the banquet venues across the 9 continents of the immortal region. The central region of the heavenly palace continent was an enormous basin, which was home to many of the important offices of the heavenly court. The main venue for this edition the Badhai banquet, was nestled high up in the clouds directly above this area. Regardless of from which angle one looked up at the clouds above the basin, they would only be able to see a vast expanse of rainbow light, and if they were lucky, they would even be greeted by the sight of all types of stunning apparitions, such as soaring Pegasi and dancing celestial maidens. In reality, there was an enormous floating island that was hundreds of thousands of kilometers in area above this sea of clouds. This place was known as the Jade Pond Paradise, and it was the long-term residence of Gu Huijin. The Jade Pond Paradise was surrounded by a ring-shaped mountain range that was filled with a vast abundance of spiritual qi, and numerous waterfalls could be seen flowing down from the mountain cliffs, presenting a stunning sight to behold. Herds of 9-colored divine deer were sipping from the pools at the feet of the waterfalls, looking relaxed and content. Occasionally, the cry of an ape would ring out from the nearby forest, and fleeting glimpses of immortal apes swinging from tree to tree could be caught from time to time. High up in the sky above the forest, flocks of immortal cranes were soaring through the heavens in a leisurely manner, and their calls resembled beautiful immortal melodies. Even higher up in the sky, countless streaks of light were converging toward the center of the Jade Lake Paradise, containing various types of carriages, spirit beast steeds, and immortals dressed in opulent clothing. The closer one drew to the center of the Jade Pond Paradise, the more abundant the world's origin qi became, to the point that all of the dew on the immortal plants and spirit trees in the forests were manifested from pure spiritual qi. Every morning and night, a large number of celestial maidens would be sent out to collect this dew to be used to brew the most delectable wines and elixirs. In the central area of the Jade Pond Paradise was a clear lake that was dozens of kilometers in radius. Its surface was as smooth as a mirror, and it was named Pure Clear Lake. Behind Pure Clear Lake was an old locust tree that very few people could confidently state the exact age of. It stood at over 10,000 feet tall, and its canopy was so vast that it encompassed close to half of the entire lake below. At the foot of the old locust tree was a 2-story pavilion that was no more than 30 feet tall, and it was where Gu Huijin cultivated. A giant, semicircular plaza had also been constructed outside of Pure Clear Lake, and the plaza resembled a fully unfurled folding fan. It had been entirely constructed from white spirit jade, and it was riddled with channels that were around 2 feet wide to draw in the water of Pure Clear Lake, dividing the entire plaza into a series of rectangular sections. There were tens of thousands of purple jade tables placed in these rectangular areas, all of which were laden with all types of fresh spirit fruits and vegetables for the guests of the Badhai banquet to enjoy. There were also slightly raised platforms situated at intervals of several thousand feet, upon which stunning celestial maidens in palace dresses danced to beautiful music. At the center of the plaza were 7 purple jade tables, all of which were currently vacant. Not far away from this row of 7 tables was a collection of close to 100 seats, several dozens of which had already been filled. All of these people possessed unfathomably powerful auras, and they were all patriarchs of sects that were vastly renowned across the entire true immortal region. Some of them had already become legends that had already been forgotten by all but the oldest generations of cultivators under the heavens, and most of them were seated with their eyes closed in meditation. In contrast, the young disciples standing behind them were all looking around in intrigue and curiosity, but given that they were all from major sects, they remained quite restrained and observant of proper etiquette. However, there were also some exceptions to this norm. For example, there was a white-haired elderly woman seated at a table slightly to the right of the center of the collection of tables, and his body was swaying back and forth like tall grass in a light breeze. It seemed that she had fallen asleep, yet somehow managed to catch herself every time right before she swayed beyond the point of no return. Seated behind her was a beautiful, white-robed woman who was also swaying back and forth in the same sleepy manner, and right at this moment, numerous tiny arcs of purple lightning suddenly appeared over her body, preparing to erupt in all directions. Right at this moment, the white-haired elderly woman snapped wide awake, then swiveled around before pressing a hand against her disciple's forehead. The arcs of lightning flashing over her body instantly faded, and she woke up in a dazed manner. Menghen, I've already told you this many times before. You can cultivate the 5 lightning true mantra, but you can't simultaneously cultivate both my fantastical dream mantra and the 5 lightning true mantra at once. Otherwise, you could easily hurt yourself, the elderly woman said in an earnest and heartfelt manner. The white-robed woman was none other than Yu Menghen. After parting ways with Han Li back in 9 Origin City, she caught the eye of the matriarch of the Dream Cloud sect, who took Yu Menghen under her wing as her final disciple. Was I using the 5 lightning true mantra in my dreams again? Yu Menghen asked in a surprised manner. What am I ever going to do with you? The elderly woman sighed, but there was a look of doting affection in her eyes. It had been over 10 million years since she had founded the Dream Cloud sect, but she hadn't been able to find a disciple capable of fully harnessing her teachings. She had stumbled upon Yu Menghen by chance, drawn to her in a dream, and she knew from that moment onward that fate had finally brought her a worthy heir. Over the course of her extensive cultivation journey, she had managed to reach the pinnacle of the great encompassment stage, and she had always yearned to make the final breakthrough to become the Dream Tao ancestor, but her hope had waned over time. Her fated encounter with Yu Menghen had given her another option, and she had placed all over her hope upon her prized disciple. As it turned out, she did indeed possess exceptional aptitude when it came to cultivating the laws of dreams, and as long as she was willing to work hard in her cultivation, she had a bright future ahead with such a capable mistress to guide her. However, what was rather exasperating to the elderly woman was that Yu Menghen seemed to have rather stubborn ties to the past, and she was unable to set aside the 5 lightning true mantra. Whenever she entered a state of slumber to cultivate the fantastical dream mantra, she would always involuntarily cultivate the 5 lightning true mantra on the side. The elderly woman simply couldn't bring herself to scold her prized disciple, so in the end, she could only relent as she said, "The Badhai banquet is about to begin soon. Once you receive your Badhai Dao fruit, make sure to cherish it. It's something that could have life-altering consequences for your cultivation. I get one as well, Yu Menghan asked as her eyes lit up with excitement. Of course not. Only those who were officially invited by the heavenly court or possess Bodhi tokens are granted Bodhi Dao fruits. However, at this stage in my cultivation, the benefits of consuming a Bodhi Dao fruit are very limited for me, so you can have mine, the elderly woman replied with a smile. No, I can't do that. It's yours, mistress, Yu Menghan hurriedly protested. You don't know how precious these Bodhi Dao fruits are, you silly girl. They're greatly cherished even by Dao ancestors, let alone high zenith and great encompassment cultivators. Of course, these Dao fruits are split into different grades, and they're assigned in accordance with one's cultivation base and ties to the heavenly court, the elderly woman explained. What's the grade of your? Yu Menghan's voice trailed off here, as she felt like this was a rather inappropriate question to ask. I'm entitled to a Dao fruit of the highest grade, of course. Once you receive it, don't consume it right away. I'll preserve it using a secret technique, and after we return to the Dream Cloud sect, I'll feed the fruit to you one slice at a time so you're not overwhelmed by its power, the elderly woman said with a doting smile. Right at this moment, a male voice rang out from nearby. How generous of you, fellow Taoist Meng Po. These Bodhi Dao fruits were refined by Gu Huijin himself over extensive periods of time while incorporating many types of law powers. Just as you said, they're highly sought after even among Dao ancestors, yet you're giving yours to your disciple. The elderly woman didn't even bother turning to see who it was that had spoken as she snapped, I'll give my Dao fruit to whoever I want. Mind your own business, you old fart. Yu Menghan turned to discover that the one who had spoken was a tall, gray-robed elderly man. His rather ragged gray robe presented a stark contrast with the opulent attire worn by everyone else, and despite Meng Po's abrasive response, the man remained unbothered as he smiled and said, For those who have yet to attain the Great Tao, consuming the Bodhi Dao fruit will help them under the Great Tao, while for those who have already reached the pinnacle, consuming the Bodhi Dao fruit will help them stave off the assimilation of the heavenly Tao. Shut your mouth, Kang Wu. I told you to mind your own business. Meng Po snapped in a disgruntled manner, and the gray-robed elderly man immediately fell into a sheepish silence. Is this senior telling the truth, mistress? Yu Menghan asked. Since becoming Meng Po's disciple, she had accrued an immense amount of knowledge and experience, and even become privy to some of the secrets of the true immortal realm. Hence, after hearing what true Lord Kang Wu had to say, she quickly came to realize that these Bodhi Dao fruits were even more precious than she had imagined. Of course he's telling the truth. Otherwise, why would a Dao ancestor like him have pledged his subordination to the heavenly court? Of course, everyone is fearful of Gu Huijin, but ultimately, he was roped in by the benefits offered to him by the heavenly court, Meng Po replied through voice transmission. Upon hearing confirmation from Meng Po, Yu Menghan decided there and then that she was absolutely not going to consume this Bodhi Dao fruit. At the same time, she knew that true Lord Kang Wu had intentionally revealed this to her in the hopes that Meng Po would consume her Dao fruit, and with that in mind, she communicated to him through voice transmission, Thank you for revealing this to me, senior. True Lord Kang Wu faltered slightly upon hearing this, then turned to Meng Po with a smile as he remarked, You found yourself a fine disciple, Meng Po. He then strode over to a table not far away from Meng Po's, before sitting down with HSI eyes closed. Yu Menghan swept her gaze over the lively and bustling scenes around her, and for some reason, a hint of sorrow welled up in her heart as the image of Han Li surfaced in her mind. I wonder where he is right now. Li. Inside the ubiquitous myriad Immortal formation. Han Li was hovering in the pitch-black space, with 72 sword spirit children flying around him, forming the almighty sword formation. Golden lightning was flashing incessantly, as the 72 children reverted back into golden flying swords, and the sword chi emanating from the flying swords combined to form a golden heavenly gate. Compared with the normal heavenly gate conjured up by the almighty sword formation, this one was far less impressive and had a rather illusory appearance, but the lightning law powers that it contained were still extremely formidable, much to the astonishment of the four Tao ancestors looking on from outside the formation. How is this possible? He's clearly a cultivator of the laws of time, yet his bonded flying swords are imbued with incredibly fearsome lightning law powers, Zhu Yu exclaimed. Her three companions exchanged a bewildered glance with one another, and none of them were able to give her an answer. Right at this moment, the heavenly gate in the ubiquitous myriad immortal formation suddenly sprang open, and countless golden lightning worms came flooding out from within, rushing toward the edge of the formation in a frenzy. A resounding explosion rang out as the mighty flight of golden lightning worms crashed into the formation, before exploding like balls of golden fire. Incredibly fearsome shockwaves swept through the entire space encompassed within the formation, while arcs of golden lightning sprang through the air in all directions. Henley flashed rapidly through the air, evading the shockwaves that were sweeping through the space around him, while looking on with tightly furrowed brows. Not only had this formation completely sealed this space away, trapping himself and Jin Tong within it, even the shockwaves from their attacks weren't able to escape, instead bouncing back and forth within this space until they dissipated on their own. Hundreds of thousands of kilometers away, Jin Tong was lashing out repeatedly at another section of the spatial barrier with her fists, causing the nearby space to rumble like thunder. At the same time, dozens of mountain ranges within the 10 immortal regions connected to the ubiquitous myriad immortal formation were trembling violently, while dozens of volcanoes were erupting in unison, and waves of unprecedented magnitudes were sweeping over vast sections of the sea. All of the cultivators in the 10 formations were also having to bear the power of Han Li and Jin Tong's attacks, and the great encompassment cultivators were able to hold their own just fine, while the high zenith cultivators were clearly struggling. As for the golden immortals, they were faring even worse, and many of them had fallen unconscious to the ground, with blood trickling out of all of these orifices. However, as soon as someone collapsed, they would immediately be replaced, so the ubiquitous myriad immortal formation remained as steady and resilient as ever, much to the relief of the four Tao ancestors. If that's all they've got, then we can easily trap them in here for months, Meng Yuan said. Don't get complacent. Make sure to keep a close eye on everything and immediately address any holes that appear, Zai Shan said in a cautious manner, and her three companions immediately gave a collective, affirmative response. Inside the formation, Han Li had already withdrawn his flying swords and was hovering in midair in a contemplative silence. A streak of golden light flew over to his side from the distance, then faded away to reveal Jin Tong. I can't do anything to this formation, she grumbled as she crossed her arms in a frustrated manner. This area has been completely sealed away, so my almighty sword formation is unable to connect with heaven and earth. As a result, it's nowhere near as powerful as it normally is, and it was also unable to break this formation, Han Li said. All of a sudden, an idea seemed to have occurred to Jin Tong, and he proposed, how about instead of attacking the spatial barrier, we each unleash an attack at each other and see if the power generated by the clash can tear this space apart. If we can do that, then we'll be able to escape into the extra heaven sphere through the resulting spatial rift. Han Li considered the idea for a moment, then decided that it was worth a try. Thus, the two of them quickly flew back until there was a distance of tens of thousands of kilometers between them, following which they engaged in a clash between fist and sword. A deafening boom rang out as bursts of shockwaves swept through the surrounding space, rebounding back and forth against the spatial barrier. Jin Tong flew back to Han Li's side, dodging the oncoming shockwaves along the way, and the two of them exchanged a disappointed glance with one another. The clash between their attacks had caused the space to tremble violently, but not even the tiniest of spatial rifts had appeared. Perhaps there wasn't enough power because we didn't go all out, Jin Tong suggested, unwilling to give up on her idea just yet. If we engage in an all-out clash, we may be able to tear open this space, but there's also a good chance that we'll sustain injuries in the process, leaving ourselves vulnerable to those four Tao ancestors. Han Li replied with a shake of his head. What the hell is up with this formation? It doesn't seem to have any weaknesses to exploit. It's like we've been devoured into the belly of some mighty beast. Jin Tong exclaimed in a disgruntled manner. Han Li's eyes abruptly lit up at the mention of the word devoured, and seeing this change in his expression, an idea also quickly occurred to Jin Tong. Maybe I can use my devouring law powers to devour this entire space and suck in the formation in the process. That's exactly what I was thinking. This space serves as the foundation for this formation, so if you devour this space, then the formation will surely be affected. Once that happens, it shouldn't be difficult for us to break it, Han Li replied with a nod. It won't be difficult for me to devour this space, but ideally, I don't want to be interrupted in the process. Otherwise, if I have to use my law powers over and over again, that'll only accelerate my assimilation with the heavenly Tao, Jin Tong said. You focus on devouring this space. I'll make sure that you're not interrupted, Han Li said in a confident manner. With the decision made, Jin Tong immediately began flying toward a corner of the formation. Along the way, she took on her gold-devouring beetle form and began tearing at the space around her, while a golden vortex took shape in her gaping mouth. A chunk of space instantly came collapsing toward her, and a pleased smile appeared on Han Li's face upon seeing this. Outside the formation, Zai Shan and the others were looking on with hesitant expressions. We shouldn't have trapped that gold-devouring immortal in there with him, Meng Yuan sighed. Way to state the obvious. What the hell do we do now? Zhu Yan snapped. What do you say, fellow Taoist Zai Shan? Dong Lihu asked, and the other two Tao ancestors also turned to Zai Shan for a verdict. If we let them escape, we'll have Gu Huijin to answer to, so I'm afraid that's not an acceptable outcome, Zai Shan sighed. Dong Lihu nodded in response, then pressed a palm down onto the spatial barrier before him. A wave of ripples surged over the spatial barrier, allowing him to step into the formation. Meanwhile, Meng Yuan lowered his gaze toward the space down below, seemingly not intending to enter the formation right away. Even the four of us combined aren't guaranteed to be able to defeat those two, so if any of you try to hang back or refuse to put in your full effort, then even if you manage to survive, you won't be getting away free of consequences. Do I make myself clear? Zai Shan warned in a cold voice. Zhu Yan took a disdainful glance at Meng Yuan, then entered the formation after Dong Lihu, while Zai Shan and Meng Yuan brought up the rear. Han Li was immediately able to detect the arrival of the four Tao ancestors, and he directed his gaze toward them as he sneered. You've finally decided to show up. Ali, Heavenly Palace Continent. More and more prestigious immortals continued to enter the Bodhi banquet venue in the Jade Pond Paradise, before being guided to their seats by the celestial maidens of the heavenly court. Even with the beautiful music and dance performances put on by the celestial maidens, the atmosphere in the venue was rather solemn. Aside from a very small number of acquaintances who were gathered in small groups, quietly chatting among themselves, the majority of the banquet's attendees were seated on their cushions, either meditating with their eyes closed or silently watching the dancing celestial maidens, waiting for the arrival of their host. Most of the seats near the center of the venue had been occupied by representatives of sects that had very close ties with the heavenly court, and they were often on very good terms with the immortal palaces of their respective immortal regions. The two great encompassment stage patriarchs of the Dharma Union sect and Molten Chamber Mountain weren't sitting together, but they were communicating with one another through voice transmission. One of them, an azure-robed, middle-aged man, asked, "Did you enjoy a smooth journey on your way here, fellow Taoist Sui Gu?" Sui Gu was a brocade-robed elderly man, and he replied, "I did, but I heard that many of our fellow Taoists were attacked and perished on the way here, including fellow Taoist Hu Liang, who you and I are both familiar with. Have you seen the armies assembled outside the eastern, southern, and western heavenly gates? It looks like the Reincarnation Palace is out in full force this time," the azure-robed man continued. "It's very impressive that the Reincarnation Palace Master has been able to oppose the heavenly court all this time, but it's far too reckless of him to be attacking at a time like this. In fact," Sui Gu's voice abruptly trailed off into an awkward smile, as he realized that he was speaking on matters that he had no right to comment on. "I'm sure the Heavenly Court also wants to take advantage of this opportunity to eradicate the Reincarnation Palace once and for all. Given that we are guests of the Heavenly Court, perhaps we're obligated to help out," the azure-robed man said. "I think self-preservation should be our top priority at all times," Sui Gu objected. "A clash between Supreme Lord Gu Huajin and the Reincarnation Palace Master will truly be a battle for the ages. I must admit that I'm rather looking forward to seeing it happen," the azure-robed man said with a smile. As soon as his voice trailed off, a small commotion suddenly rang out from behind them, and they turned to discover a thin figure in a black and white Taoist robe leading a black-robed man into the venue, the latter of whom had his face completely concealed behind a veiled hat. "Who is that? He must be someone very important to have been personally escorted here by Taoist Master Ching Qiu. Could it be? Could it be him? No way. Even if he dares to come here, surely he wouldn't do it alone. Does he have a death wish? Why wouldn't he dare to come alone? I heard that Supreme Lord Xuanyuan Jai has recently met his demise, and it was most likely at his hands. Well, 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 things are certainly going to get interesting now." Ali. As the two figures made their way down the white jade path, the nearby banquet attendees erupted into chatter, and many of them had risen to their feet with stunned and apprehensive expressions. "It's the Reincarnation Palace Master," Sui Gu exclaimed in a quiet voice, while the azure-robed man was looking on in a speechless manner. The Reincarnation Palace Master had never revealed his true appearance to anyone, and his location had always been one of the biggest mysteries of the true immortal realm. But all of the banquet attendees present were some of the most powerful figures in existence, and they were able to identify him based on his attire and his aura. Under everyone's intense scrutiny, even Taoist Master Ching Qiu was beginning to feel the pressure, and a few beads of cold sweat had appeared on his forehead. In contrast, the Reincarnation Palace Master seemed completely unflustered, not even bothering to spare a glance at the stunned bystanders as he followed along behind Taoist Master Ching Qiu. Right at this moment, a thunderous roar suddenly rang out from near the front of the venue. "There is no place here for you, Reincarnation Palace Master." Yu Menghen was rather startled by this outburst from true Lord Kang Wu. He had appeared so mild and amicable just a moment ago, yet he was suddenly livid with rage. This was exactly what Taoist Master Ching Qiu feared would happen, and he was left at a loss for what to do. True Lord Kang Wu had no descendants, only a prized disciple that he regarded as his own son. Back when he had been serving in the blazing heavens Immortal Palace, he had been sent out to capture Gan Jiuzhen, and he very nearly succeeded, but she was ultimately able to slip away from what had seemed like a dire situation. In the wake of her near capture, the Reincarnation Palace Master sent out Tan Lang of the 8 Reincarnation Envoys to attack the Blazing Heaven's Immortal Palace, slaughtering all of the Heavenly Court cultivators inside, including true Lord Kang Wu's prized disciple. To this day, it remained unclear to everyone, except for the Reincarnation Palace Master, why the Reincarnation Palace had retaliated against the Blazing Heaven's Immortal Palace in such brutal fashion. From that day forth, Tan Lang and the Reincarnation Palace Master had been regarded as sworn enemies of true Lord Kang Wu, and the scar on Tan Lang's face had been left behind by none other than true Lord Kang Wu. The Reincarnation Palace Master took a calm glance at true Lord Kang Wu, then asked, "Who are you?" True Lord Kang Wu was even more infuriated to hear this, and his aura instantly swelled to a peak, putting his almighty power as a Tao ancestor on full display as he prepared to throw himself at the Reincarnation Palace Master. "Don't be reckless, fellow Taoist Kang Wu," Meng Po warned while shielding Yu Menghen behind her. However, true Lord Kang Wu's fury had driven him far beyond the point of rationality, and he ignored her warnings as he took a step forward, causing the entire Jade Pond paradise to shudder violently. "Please stand down, fellow Taoist Kang Wu. The Reincarnation Palace Master is an esteemed guest that was invited here by Supreme Lord Gu Huijin himself," Taoist Master Qing Qiu declared as he reluctantly stepped forward to mediate. "Get out of my way." True Lord Kang Wu spat through gritted teeth as veins began bulging on his forehead. Taoist Master Qing Qiu's expression darkened slightly as he prepared to pacify true Lord Kang Wu by force. Before the situation could escalate any further, an authoritative voice suddenly rang out across the entire Jade Pond paradise. "This is a day for celebration and peace, fellow Taoist Kang Wu." Everyone immediately looked up into the heavens upon hearing this, while true Lord Kang Wu stopped cold in his tracks, then slowly turned back as he forcibly stifled his own fury. Immediately thereafter, several figures suddenly appeared behind the 7 jade tables situated right next to Pure Clear Lake, bringing with them a pleasant aroma. At the very center of the group was none other than Gu Huijin, seated on his white jade wheelchair, and to his left was Kai Rong, the essential fire Tao ancestor. Seated on Gu Huijin's right was a beautiful young woman in a short, blue dress, presenting a stark contrast with Kai Rong on Gu Huijin's left. There was a sweet smile on her face, and her long, black hair had been arranged into countless little braids around the pair of delicate dragon horns on her head. Her appearance and attire both struck the beholder with the impression that she was just a harmless young woman, but in reality, she was the essential water Tao ancestor, Chen Ruyan. Her aura was the polar opposite to Kai Rong's, and it felt as if their great Taos were conflicting with one another. As a result, both of them held an innate distaste for each other, and they were stoically looking away from one another, clearly not on very good terms. Seated to the other side of Kai Rong was Patriarch Li Yuanju of the 9 Origins Temple. For this occasion, he had put on a striking, purple and golden Taoist robe as opposed to his usual coarse linen robe, and it was very apparent that the robe was a powerful, immortal treasure. On the other side, seated next to Chen Ruyan, was a tall figure dressed in a long, black robe. The figure's entire body was covered from head to toe, leaving only a pair of purple eyes exposed, and there seemed to have been countless stars flashing within their pupils. Their name was Yin Ming, and they were the most mysterious and enigmatic of the 7 heavenly Tao lords. Over the countless years that Chen Tuan had spent in seclusion, he had been gradually forgotten, but there were still legends of his feats being told. However, there weren't even any legends surrounding Tao ancestor Yin Ming, and even the high-ranking cultivators of the heavenly court knew next to nothing about them. At this point, Chen Tuan had already been assimilated by the heavenly Tao to such a degree that he was almost no different from a mortal, while Xuanyuan Jai had been recently slain, so all that remained of the 7 heavenly Tao lords were these 5. Gu Huijin would always make an appearance during the past editions of the Bodhi banquet, but that was not the case for the other 7 heavenly Tao lords, particularly Yin Ming, so it was already quite a rare sight to see 5 of them at once. All of the banquet attendees immediately rose to their feet to extend a welcome toward the 5 supreme lords, while Gu Huijin smiled as he said, "The Reincarnation Palace Master is a guest today, so please observe the proper etiquette, fellow Taoist Kang Wu." It sounded more like he was serving as a friendly mediator rather than issuing a warning, but true Lord Kang Wu knew better than to challenge Gu Huijin's authority, and he returned to his seat with a defeated and weary look on his face. The Reincarnation Palace Master turned his gaze to the 5 supreme lords with a calm expression, while Taoist Master Qing Qiu heaved an internal sigh of relief before leading him to the front row of the venue, where all of the Tao ancestors were seated. "Please take a seat, Palace Master," Taoist Master Qing Qiu said. The Reincarnation Palace Master took a glance at the seat that he had been led to, then stepped over the table to arrive before the tables designated for the 7 heavenly Tao lords. He then made a beckoning motion to one of the 7 tables, and the table was instantly drawn to him, along with the cushion behind it. "He's already dead, so what's the point in leaving a table out for him?" The Reincarnation Palace Master chuckled as he sat down onto the cushion, then poured himself a cup of wine from the flagon on the table. The entire venue erupted into a frenzy upon seeing this, and Taoist Master Qing Qiu began sweating profusely once again. At the same time, he couldn't help but feel a hint of admiration toward the Reincarnation Palace Master. He couldn't think of anyone else that would be able to put on such a bold display in a setting like this. However, he still had a job to do, so he had no choice but to muster up his courage and approach the Reincarnation Palace Master as he said, "Please return to your assigned seat, Palace Master." The Reincarnation Palace Master completely ignored him as he downed the wine in his cup in one go. "It's fine, he can sit where he likes," Gu Huijin said with a smile. Taoist Master Qing Qiu was very relieved to hear this, and he quickly bade farewell to the 7 heavenly Tao lords before setting off on a return journey to the Eastern Victory Continent. As the head of the 7 heavenly Tao lords, Gu Huijin was naturally seated in the center, and his table was slightly taller than the others. There was one vacant table reserved for Chen Tuan, while the deceased Xuanyuan Jai's table had been claimed by the Reincarnation Palace Master. With the Reincarnation Palace Master's new seating arrangement approved by Gu Huijin, the tense atmosphere gradually subsided, and the heavenly music played by the celestial maidens resumed. Right at this moment, a figure enshrouded in a dense layer of cloud and mist appeared before everyone. After the mist faded away, a tall figure dressed in an azure robe with clouds embroidered upon it was revealed, and it was another one of the heavenly court's Tao ancestors, Tao Ancestor Bai Yun. Tao Ancestor Bai Yun extended a salute toward Gu Huijin and the others, then turned to the other banquet attendees with a wide smile as he greeted, "Welcome one and all to the Bodhi banquet." As soon as his voice trailed off, a blanket of rainbow clouds appeared above everyone, within which dozens of stunning celestial maidens broke into an elegant dance with flower petals raining down from their gorgeous dresses, presenting a marvelous spectacle to behold. Everyone was finally able to relax a little upon seeing this, and they began sampling the wine and spirit fruits on their tables. Deep within a boundless expanse of space was a gargantuan silver mountain that was hovering in midair, with a summit so tall that it was completely out of sight. The silver mountain was entirely crafted from a type of translucent silver ore, and it was giving off formidable spatial law power fluctuations. This type of silver ore was a type of powerful spatial material known as void crystals, and the collective spatial law powers emanating from this vast mountain of void crystals was enough to cause the entire surrounding space to tremble incessantly. As soon as the nearby bursts of chaotic spatial turbulence drew close to the silver mountain, they immediately turned submissive and docile before flowing past it. Beneath the mountain was an unfathomably enormous black turtle that resembled a vast continent, carrying the silver mountain on its back as it slowly swam through the spatial turbulence. The silver mountain was riddled with countless small holes that ran all the way from the foot of the mountain to the summit, giving it the appearance of a beehive. Upon closer inspection, one would discover that these holes were all entrances to caves that formed a complex system of tunnels, and it seemed that the entire silver mountain had been hollowed out. The tunnels were lined with stone chambers that were separated by rather short intervals, and each tunnel contained countless chambers, amounting to an astronomical number when the entire mountain was taken into consideration. The stone chambers were connected by thick, silver lines, forming a dense and complex silver net that connected all of the stone chambers in the mountain together, and there were also many silver lines that vanished into the space, making it unclear where they ultimately extended to. These silver lines were all flashing incessantly, as if they were transmitting something, and within each stone chamber were several formations. In contrast with normal teleportation formations, these only facilitated the teleportation of objects, and occasionally, items of all descriptions would appear in the formations. There were reincarnation palace cultivators stationed beside each formation, putting those items into other teleportation formations, or handing them off to the puppets off to the side. After receiving said items, the puppets would immediately exit the chamber before delivering them to other parts of the Silver Mountain. The interior of the Silver Mountain was like a gargantuan nation that was extremely busy, but also functioning in a very orderly manner. On the summit of the Silver Mountain sat a palace with an internal space that was tens of thousands of feet in size. The palace was completely empty, with the exception of 4 massive tool refinement cauldrons situated at the very center. These cauldrons were hundreds of feet tall, reaching almost all the way up to the ceiling of the palace, and they were identical in style, but were blue, azure, crimson, and black in color. The undersides of the 4 cauldrons were enveloped by silver flames, and seated around them were dozens of cultivators, most of whom were wearing reincarnation palace masks, while the rest were dressed in the purple robes of the Devil Realm's Night Sun Empire. All of these cultivators were making strings of hand seals, casting precious materials into the 4 cauldrons. Bursts of dull, thunderous rumbling could be heard ringing out from within the cauldrons, and all of a sudden, the lid of the blue cauldron flew up on its own, following which a ball of blue light shot out from within. A tall man from the reincarnation palace near the cauldron raised his hand, and the ball of blue light was drawn into his grasp, revealing a blue rabbit reincarnation palace mask. The man examined the mask momentarily, then made his way into a side hall at the back of the palace. There were 3 stone platforms in the side hall, with 1 cultivator seated atop each of them. The 3 of them were each holding a white jade slab, upon which lines of text were flashing incessantly. The 3 of them were constantly keeping an eye on the text flashing over the jade slabs while making strings of hand seals, looking very busy. The one on the left was a gray-robed, middle-aged man with a gaunt face and a pair of sunken eyes. The one in the center was a purple-robed elderly man who seemed to have come from the Night Sun Empire. He was slightly hunchbacked, and his skin was heavily wrinkled, but his eyes were very bright and energetic. To his right was a white-robed woman with fair and delicate skin, but her beautiful features were marred by her cold expression. All three of them were at the great encompassment stage, with the purple-robed elderly man possessing the loftiest cultivation base of the three, having already reached the pinnacle of the mid-great encompassment stage. The man from the reincarnation palace set the blue mask down before the three cultivators on the stone platforms with a respectful bow, and the three of them immediately turned their attention to the mask before each casting an incantation seal onto it in unison. Three beams of light, one gray, one silver, and one white, shot out of their fingertips before surging into the blue mask. There were countless silver runes dancing within the beam of silver light, warping the space around them. The beam of gray light wasn't giving off any aura fluctuations, and it was as if it were nothing more than an illusion. As for the beam of white light, it was rippling incessantly as it took on all types of peculiar shapes and forms, presenting an intriguing sight to behold. All the while, the man from the reincarnation palace had his head lowered as a gesture of respect, not daring to look at the three great encompassment cultivators at work. These three cultivators were very important figures in the reincarnation palace. All of the reincarnation palace masks were refined by them, and it was thanks to them that the masks possessed their item teleportation, concealment, and shape-shifting abilities. The blue mask rose up into the air, and silver, gray, and white spirit patterns began to slowly spread over their surface. Within mere moments, the spirit patterns had spread over the entire mask, following which it sprang up into the air and began racing through the hall like a joyous blue bird. The man from the reincarnation palace swept a sleeve through the air to release a streak of white light, which caught the mask before drawing it into his grasp. The spirit patterns on the blue mask quickly faded away, but it continued to radiate layers of vibrant light. "Thank you, seniors," the man from the reincarnation palace said as he extended a respectful salute, then departed with the mask, while the three great encompassment cultivators immediately turned their attention back to their jade slabs. Shortly thereafter, another cultivator of the reincarnation palace entered the side hall, this time with an azure mask, and the three great encompassment cultivators sprang into action again. It took a little longer to engrave the spirit patterns onto the azure mask than it had for the blue one, and not long after that, a crimson mask was brought to them. The masks were brought in one after another almost without pause, and only after working on over 100 masks in succession were they afforded a short break. There were no more lines of text appearing on the jade slab, and at this point, both the gray-robed man and the white-robed woman were looking a little weary, while the purple-robed elderly man wasn't showing any signs of strain. "Your powers are growing by leaps and bounds, fellow Taoist Shi. It looks like it won't be long before you reach the late great encompassment stage," the gray-robed man said as he turned to the purple-robed elderly man. "Your concealment law powers are also becoming more and more profound, fellow Taoist Lu. The concealment abilities of the recent batches of masks have become more and more potent. As for reaching the late great encompassment stage, that's not something that I dare to hope for," the purple-robed elderly man replied with a faint smile. "My concealment law powers cannot even begin to compare with your spatial law powers, fellow Taoist Shi. In fact, I'd say they're even inferior to fellow Taoist Bai's shape-shifting law powers," the gray-robed man said with a modest shake of his head. "Right now, the palace master is facing very powerful foes in the reincarnation palace, yet here you two are, chatting about irrelevant nonsense. If you truly wish to do your part and help the palace master, then focus your attention on the task at hand," the white-robed woman interjected in a scathing manner. The gray-robed man gave an awkward smile in response, while the purple-robed elderly man's brows furrowed slightly in displeasure. Right at this moment, an azure-robed figure emerged from deep within the side hall and reprimanded, "Don't be so rude, Bai Yu. Fellow Taoist, she is currently serving our reincarnation palace, but he's a member of our reincarnation palace, so we must treat him with respect. Palace Master Huangfu, the gray-robed man exclaimed as he hurriedly rose to his feet before extending a respectful bow toward the azure-robed young man. My apologies, Palace Master Huangfu, the white-robed woman said as she also hurriedly rose to her feet. She then turned to the purple-robed elderly man as she apologized once more. Please forgive me for my rude outburst just now, fellow Taoist she. The purple-robed elderly man had also stood up from his stone platform, and he waved a hand in the white-robed woman's direction before turning to the azure-robed young man to extend a slight bow. The azure-robed young man was none other than Tao ancestor Huangfu Yu of the Reincarnation Palace, who had previously made an appearance in the Gray Realm. No need for formalities. Thank you for your hard work over the years, Huangfu Yu said with a pleasant smile. There's no need to thank us. We've only been performing the duties that are expected of us. How are things going in the heavenly court? The gray-robed man asked. The situation is still rather unclear at the moment, but as long as our hearts are one and we have the palace master to lead us, defeating the heavenly court is very much possible, Huangfu Yu replied, and the three great encompassment cultivators gave a collective, affirmative response. Huangfu Yu turned his gaze to the purple-robed elderly man, then said, Fellow Taoist Shi, I'll have to trouble you to oversee the deal between our reincarnation palace and the vast origin house. As for the costs incurred, you'll be compensated once this battle is over. I'll be sure to keep a close eye on things, the purple-robed elderly man replied with a nod. I knew I could count on you, fellow Taoist Shi, Huangfu Yu said with a pleased nod, and after issuing a few more instructions, he departed from the side hall. Shortly thereafter, he appeared on the summit of the giant mountain, then cast his gaze toward a certain direction in an absent-minded manner. At the Badhai banquet, following the conclusion of the customary song and dance performance, everyone was beginning to grow rather excited as their main objective for this trip was about to be fulfilled. I'm sure everyone is already tired of waiting. As usual, all banquet attendees will receive Badhai Dao fruits, but this time, things will be a little different. Everyone was immediately feeling a little apprehensive in the wake of this announcement from Dao ancestor Bai Yun. Could it be that something had to be done in exchange for the Badhai Dao fruits for this edition of the Badhai banquet? With that in mind, the entire venue erupted into concerned chatter. Rest assured, everyone, this will only come as good news for all of you. Out of the infinite kindness of our Supreme Lord, he has decided to distribute Badhai Dao fruits to all banquet attendees, regardless of whether they're invited guests or merely part of the entourages, Dao ancestor Bai Yun declared. Everyone was quite relieved to hear this, following which they chanted in unison, Thank you, Supreme Lord. Gu Huijin gave a slight nod at everyone's gratitude, while the Reincarnation Palace Master looked on in a calm and composed silence. Moments later, 8 giant immortal birds appeared in the sky, with each foe them holding an ornate crate in their beaks. The 8 birds set off in different directions like speeding arrows, and the crates contained the Badhai Dao fruits designated for the other sub-venues. Following their departure, groups of celestial maidens began to file into the main venue, carrying Badhai Dao fruits atop jade platters, and sure enough, each of the banquet attendees received a Dao fruit, including even the Reincarnation Palace Master. He picked up the Badhai Dao fruit that had been placed before him, to discover that it was a bright red fruit that resembled a plum in shape, and it was far from what he had expected. Furthermore, the fruit seemed to have been glowing from the inside, giving it the appearance of a miniature red lantern, and it was also giving off an alluring aroma. The Reincarnation Palace Master took a glance at the Badhai Dao fruits in front of Gu Huijin and the others to discover that they were identical to his own, so these were most likely all Bodhi Dao fruits of the highest caliber. All of the Dao ancestors and great encompassment cultivators present were able to maintain their composure, while the members of their entourages were unable to suppress their excitement at this unexpected blessing. All of them were holding onto their Tao fruits as if they were the most precious treasures under the heavens, and they were virtually salivating in excitement. But no one dared to consume their Tao fruit without permission from Gu Huijin. There's no need to restrain yourselves, everyone. The Bodhi Dao fruits have already been distributed, so they are free to be devoured as you please, Gu Huijin declared with a warm smile, then took a bite out of his own Dao fruit, and only then did everyone else dare to take their first bites. In the blink of an eye, the entire venue was filled with radiant light and an intoxicating aroma. In the first row, Meng Po brought her Bodhi Dao fruit to her lips, and the same light that emanated from everyone else's Dao fruits began radiating from her own. But as opposed to actually consuming the Dao fruit, she secretly tucked it away. Yu Menghan did the exact same thing, stowing her own Dao fruit away as well. At the same time, she was thinking to herself that if they could meet again someday, then she would give him this Bodhi Dao fruit as a reunion gift. The Reincarnation Palace Master examined his Bodhi Dao fruit for a moment longer, then casually crushed it in his grasp, and it disintegrated into streaks of light that escaped in all directions. Gu Huijin raised an eyebrow ever so slightly upon seeing this, but he didn't express any displeasure. Once everyone had consumed their Bodhi Dao fruits, the sound of a gong strike rang out across the entire venue, accompanied by delightful music. The surface of pure clear lake began to ripple, while the giant locust tree behind it gently swayed from side to side. A flurry of locust leaves came drifting down onto the venue, gradually taking on a translucent appearance as they descended. In that instant, many of the cultivators in the venue instinctively closed their eyes and began to meditate.